The advice and opinions expressed by the host of Autism Live and her guests are meant solely as suggestion and should not be in any way construed as child-specific advice. The Center for Autism and Related Disorders advises working with a board-certified behavior analyst who has experience with autism before starting any intensive behavioral intervention. Any choices you make in determining your child's treatment are completely at your own discretion.
Good morning and welcome to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. It's Friday. We are here at the end of the month of August, and I want to remind all of you that we will not be here on Monday because we are going to be attending the Autism Care and Treatment Today annual Golf Classic charity event that will be hosted by Joe Montana from Criminal Minds, a wonderful actor and a fabulous autism dad. He has a daughter on the autism spectrum, and he'll be hosting that event. We're going to go. We're not going to webcast you live from that event, but we will be getting some interviews for you to see later on. And we did it live last year, and it was kind of crazy. And we decided not to be crazy, which is always a good choice if you have a choice. But we do want you to see some of the wonderful people that are there and support us and raise money. I also want to remind you that this particular event, Autism Care and Treatment Today, is a wonderful charity that gives monies to family and support to families for the things that they ask for. But they have several different divisions. There's the Autism Care and Treatment Today that anybody can apply for a grant for. Then there's Act Español that is specifically for families that are Spanish speaking. And there are several other different divisions. And there is one, their military initiative to help families that one or more member is serving in the armed forces and they have a child on the autism spectrum. So this event helps to go, the money is taken for that particular branch of ACT Today, which I think is a remarkable service that they do, because heaven knows our military families, we know that for some reason, nobody knows why exactly, the prevalence in military families is much higher. We just found out that the prevalence several years ago was 1 in 88 for the general population, but we've known for several years that it was already 1 in 88 for the military families. So, you know, as I was just going to say, we're all looking forward to hearing what the new numbers will be, but we're not, right? I don't think anybody's looking forward to that. I think everybody's looking with trepidation towards that. But in any case, the prevalence is higher in military families. And not only that, as if that wasn't bad enough, they also statistically get fewer services. And part of that is because they move on a regular basis. You know, there have been a lot of difficulties with TRICARE. We saw that a judge just recently, that is the insurance company, by the way, that military families go through, TRICARE. And until recently, it was precedent that if you were non-active or retired and had a child on the spectrum, that there was no coverage for ABA. And a judge recently ruled that that was prejudicial and capricious, I believe were the words that he used, and we'll see how that translates to our retired military actually having their children be treated. It's devastating to think about where progress is being made, and but in the meantime, those families need help now, right? And Autism Care and Treatment Today, that's exactly what they're about, is helping those families now. And that Golf Charity Classic goes to raise money for that. It's not too late if you know somebody who would like to golf in the Los Angeles area and have a wonderful day being with a group of celebrities and other people who are wanting to raise money for autism. autism, you can still participate. And you can go to Autism Care and Treatment Today. It's www.act-today.org to find out more about that. But that's where we're going to be on Monday, so we won't be here, but we will be here for the next 3 hours, talking about topics to help us to be the most effective, most efficient members of a team working with a child on the autism spectrum. We've got some really wonderful guests today I'm really excited about, and we're continuing to talk about some topics, wide range of topics, right? You know, I remember when we started this and somebody said, how on earth are you going to find stuff to talk about for 3 hours a day? Which, you know, I want to throw my head back and do one of those villain laughs, you know, because there's so much to talk about that frequently we're rushing in the last minute saying, we'll talk more about this on Monday. We know that this journey, whether you're a parent, teacher, or a practitioner, it's an intensive journey. It's not a weekend. It's not even a long weekend. It's not even a summer. This is a journey that sometimes is a lifetime, and in most cases, there's a really intensive journey, hopefully, with ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis. And we do talk about ABA a lot here. And there's a really good reason for that. It's the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. And I think that's really important, right? But I think of equal importance is the fact that not only has it been proven to be scientifically effective, it's been proven to be scientifically effective at creating progress for all of our children. And that's really key for me, because there's a lot of different things out there and we talk about a lot of different things. But sometimes something works for one child and it doesn't work for another child. And we've seen that throughout time with autism. It's I think it's one of the hardest things for all of us in our community, because it sort of feels a little like Russian roulette. You know, nobody knows what's going to happen. But we do know with ABA that if you invest the time, learn the tools, and go through the process of ABA, it's got to be the right amount of ABA, though. I can't emphasize that enough. The right amount of ABA, that what we're going to see is substantive progress for absolutely all of our kids, regardless of their age, regardless of their skill ability, regardless of the effect that this disorder has on them. We're going to see progress. But I mentioned it's got to be the right amount, and it's got to be over the right amount of time. It's like a prescription. And in fact, we've been talking about with autism insurance reform that, you know, there's a lot of confusion out there about people not knowing what to do, how to get it. But if you have insurance and you find out that it isn't self-funded, you are more than likely, if you're in a state that has insurance reform, you are more than likely eligible for benefits through your insurance company. How do you get that? It's literally a prescription that the doctor writes that says that it's medically necessary that your child have ABA. And once they write that, then you turn it into the insurance company, and there's a process through which you go, but that's what it takes, is that prescription. And they'll, you know, someone, the insurance company or someone, they'll have someone assess your child to see what the appropriate amount of ABA is. And by the way, it's not the same for all kids. It isn't. But we know when we're doing early intensive behavioral intervention that the science has been done on again and again and again, showing that between 25, I'm choosing my words here so that I don't get too wordy and then I end up doing it anyway, between 25 and 40 hours a week is really what gets you the best possible outcome. 25 to 40 hours a week, 2-year minimum. And for a lot of kids, it's a lot more than 2 years. For my child, 5 years. 5 years, right? And in the beginning, we had 40 hours. And by the time we were in our 5th year, we had a lot less than that. I think we were between 8 and 10 in the 5th year that we were in per week. Per week. It's a lot. It's a lot. And so when we do that, when we sign up for that, there are a whole lot of other things. Right? There's a whole lot of stress and a whole lot of dealing with everybody on the family, a whole lot of financial things going on. So we talk about all of those things here on the show, about keeping our whole family healthy, but applying those tools of ABA, applying life skills so that we can make that happen, figuring out the funding, getting through the stress, you know, what it's like to have strangers going through your house, working with your children, how to keep everybody safe, how to keep everybody productive, and get the best possible result you can, which we know is different for every child, but progress. The name of the game is progress. And since it's available for all of our children, that's the good news. That's the really good news. I think for so long, people were wandering around going, I don't know what to do because I don't know what works. I don't know what to, right? Well, we know that ABA works. So that's an incredible thing. And that's one of the reasons why we talk about it. It's not the magic bullet that there's this one size fits all thing where we can just hand out a t-shirt and say ABA and everybody gets the same thing. It's a set of tools. We have to apply them creatively for each individual child. But I also think that's good news because then we're looking at the individual child. And I know whether you're a parent, a teacher, or a practitioner, you know the importance of that, right? I'm a parent and I'm a former teacher. My son was diagnosed with autism at 2.5. He's 9 now. And quite honestly, that's, a part of my everyday is me looking at him as an individual and understanding what he needs and having everybody in his life see him for him and not a diagnosis and not their idea of a diagnosis and not for his individual behaviors, but the sum total of him. He's a person, he has rights, and I know that it's part of my job on this planet to make sure that he gets what he needs and what he deserves. And to that end, I want to help you to help your child to get what they need and what they deserve. I want to be of service to you. I'm not an expert in ABA. I'm not an expert in autism. I'm not an expert in, just about anything. But as I said, I've been on this journey for a while, and so I have respect and I have empathy. Oh my gosh, have I got empathy for what you're going through. And I think even more than that, I have passion to help you to get the answers that you want. And on your behalf, I've been granted access to a whole lot of experts and incredible people who, can I just tell you how passionate they are about helping your child. I know that sometimes at 2 o'clock in the morning, it doesn't seem like you have anybody on your side and that you're just fighting, tilting at windmills, right? But there are a whole lot of people who do want to get you information and do want to help you. And I want to give you access to them. So all you have to do is tell us, what do you need? That's all. And nobody's asking for a credit card. Nobody's looking for your email so they can spam you. That's just not happening. But we are answering questions and forwarding questions to experts and getting answers and more questions, quite frankly. Okay, so how do you participate in the conversation? If you're watching us right now on autism-live.com, then you will see before you see me talking there in the little box, and next to it, it says, Shannon is answering right now, ... right? Underneath that, there's a box, and it's active right now. I hit the live button, and so you can write something in right now, and it appears magically right here on my screen, and that continues to happen even when I have an expert in the studio or if I'm talking to somebody on Skype, and you can ask them questions. We love it when you do that. So please give us your suggestions, your thoughts, your concerns, even if it's just to say, I'm here and I'm in Minnesota, or I'm here and I'm on, the Riviera. Wherever it is, we love to know where you are. We keep a big map because all we get sometimes is we get IP locations of where in the world people are. And anytime we get a new one, we put it on a big map of the world to see where you guys are watching. But we love to know specifically. So if you're watching from someplace and want to let us know so we can put a pin on the map for you, because we like to know that we're being of use to somebody. Right? I'm sitting in a room and I know I'm talking to somebody. I'd love to know who. But in any case, there are lots of different ways that you can participate in this conversation. If you're not watching us live, if it says rebroadcast, you can email us. And we love it when we get emails from you. We will respond to your email the next available live show on the show, but we'll also send you a typewritten response. And sometimes we forward your question to the appropriate expert and you get a response from them, which is really a lovely thing. I know some of you have been very excited to see who you've heard back from, and very grateful to have the opportunity to pick somebody's ear and so on and so forth. Also, you can phone in. If you are somebody who likes to talk like me and the typing thing, not so much, phone in. You can be with us right now. You and I can have a chat. You can tell me how your Friday is going. Tell me about your child. Tell me about what you're doing. Tell me about what's working. Tell me about what you'd like to know more about. out. So you can phone into the show live. You can also call in, and if you don't want to be talking on the show live, but you need somebody to talk to, we've got people standing by waiting to talk to you, and you can call after the show is live. If we're not here, you can leave us a message, and we'll get back to you as soon as we're back in the studio. You can also Skype with us. We love it. We're going to be Skyping a little bit later today with a special guest, and we'll tell you more about him in just a few minutes, but you can Skype from anywhere around the world, and we can plug you right in here to the show. If you have a camera on your computer, we can even put a picture of you up. If you're not having a good hair day and you don't want to do that, or you don't have a camera, it's okay. We'll put you in audio only. We'll work with you. So we can have that conversation, or you can be, if you want to Skype in and talk to Dr. Jonathan Tarbox later on, you certainly can, because it's Friday. It's research day. Okay, so you can also talk to us on Facebook. We have a new Facebook page, Autism Live. We appreciate all your likes there. And when you participate in the conversation, whether you're answering the question of the day or checking out some of the different links. I know yesterday I shared, actually, because I was on our friend Danny Bowman's site asking her, you guys were asking yesterday about books that you can read with your child and with your child's class, and her aunt had mentioned a book. Danny Bowman, of course, is the 17-year-old who owns her own film studio on the autism spectrum, is an animator, teaches all around the country animation for kids on the spectrum, an amazing young woman. So I was on her site yesterday on Facebook to send her a message saying, hey, I can't find it. What is the author of this book? I must be looking it up wrong. And I noticed that she was sharing that another guest that we had on the show, Carrie Magro, a young man on the autism spectrum who is in graduate school and is a motivational speaker. And oh my goodness, just an amazing, amazing young man, has started a scholarship for individuals on the spectrum and is taking applications for that scholarship. So that is on our Facebook page right now, along with a bunch of other stuff that you might find interesting. But while you're there, give us a like if you like us. We appreciate it when you do, and feel free to share anything that's on there. You can also tweet with us. We really love it when you guys tweet. So that's another way that you can interact with us. And I mentioned that you could be watching us on autism-live.com, but there are many, 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 many ways to, it's Friday, I'm just a little silly today. There are many ways to watch the show. You could be watching us on Blip TV. This is great for when you want to go back and see an episode that you missed, or you see me talking with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox and he says, oh, like the episode where, a month and a half ago when we were talking about pica, or when we talked about the research studies that you can go into an IEP and take with you to show the effectiveness of ABA. Gotta love that one, right? You can go on Blip and search and find all of the interviews that we've done with Dr. Jonathan Tarbox and all the topics that you're interested in. If you just want to know, today what you're dealing with is toileting because you're starting toilet boot camp tomorrow and you want to see 3 different experts talking about toileting, there it is. You can go and search that topic on Blip. You can leave us messages on Blip. You can fast forward, rewind, go back over something, all of those wonderful things. You can also do that on YouTube as well. We have our own YouTube channel there, and what I love about YouTube is then you can share. So if you've seen the video you saw Dr. Amy Kenzer talking about toilet training, and then you saw Angela Persicki talking about it, and you go, I really want to share this with my mother-in-law who's given me grief about how I'm doing toilet training, and you just send it to her, right? Post it on her Facebook. It's subtle. There's nothing passive-aggressive about that. No. But share it with people. You might have a friend that has been having a difficult time with something, and you see something on our YouTube channel and go, this is exactly what we were talking about. Boom. And you can still ask questions about interviews. I don't care if it was 6 months ago. If you have a question for one of our guests, send it on over. We're still in contact with them. We know where they are. We'll have them back on again just for you. Of course, according to their schedule. We're not forcing anybody in here. But they love to come in and give you guys information. That's a wonderful thing. So you can be watching us on iTunes as well. We're a free download on iTunes, and you can also be watching us on Ustream. All of those wonderful different ways. Please participate. We're here for you. It costs nothing. All of the different ways in which you can watch us are free. All of the different ways that you can ask questions are free. You gotta love it. I sound like a mattress commercial. Okay, this point in the morning, we always like to take on the jargon of the day. This is when we take one word, one phrase, one anagram, and try to make some sense of it for people who are overwhelmed and underslept and didn't go to college for psychology or to get a degree in autism, right? It's so difficult sometimes that people talk and you go, I have no idea what you're talking about. Okay, today's thing that we're talking about is something that in shorthand they call it EO. What in the heck is EO? Well, an EO stands for an establishing operation. I know it's so much clearer now, right? We always give you an actual definition and then we give you a watered down version and hopefully help you to get a grip on what these terms mean. So EO is an establishing operation. Get ready for this. Hold on to your chairs. A motivating operation. Well, now see, it's so much clearer. That establishes, increases the effectiveness of some stimulus, object, or event as a reinforcer. See, it's just getting clearer and clearer, isn't it? Thus increasing the current frequency of all behavior that has been reinforced by that stimulus, object, or event in the past. So now we know what that is. Not even a clue, right? Maybe you're better than I am, but I remember the first time I looked at this and went, really? Seriously? This is a definition for this? Who is this helping? Okay. All right, here's our working definition. Let's see if it gets us a little bit closer. Some internal or external, I can't even say it, external variable that makes particular reinforcers even more reinforcing, thus increasing the likelihood that you will engage in certain behaviors associated with assessing those reinforcers. It's not much better, is it? Right? Because these terms are so specific, we have to use certain terms. Okay, so let's you and I water this down even more so that we can really understand it. I think of an EO as something that it's like the recipe for success. It's how we power pack things to make sure that we're going to have success. And EOs are things that we're constantly creating. So if we know that we're working on toilet training this weekend, then one of the things that we're going to do is we're going to create an environment in which we're more likely to have the child successfully pee on the potty, right? Because that's our goal. Our goal is to get them first to pee on the potty, and we're working towards that. So what can we possibly do to the environment to ensure the likelihood that there is going to be pee in the potty? Well, we can start by feeding the child a lot of salty snacks, which means in turn, they're going to be really, really thirsty. And you know, it's that thing about we do something and there's always a consequence. You eat something salty, you get thirsty, you drink. What is the likelihood that you are going to need to pee? It's going to go up, right? So that's an EO. We're establishing an environment and we're working on it, right? It didn't happen naturally. We're creating an environment in which we're more likely to see the behavior that we want to see. And so that when that happens, we're going to be able to, you know, we'll have more opportunities to put the child, we still have to catch it, right? We have to catch that moment. And there's a lot of things that we can do to do that. Watch any of our videos about toilet training. I'm talking so fast, I'm losing my breath. But we're setting up those circumstances where we're more likely going to have success. So perfect example, the toilet training one. There's a whole host of different things that we can do to set our kids up for the circumstances to come. Now, an EO, for this purpose, we're talking about it as a positive thing. How can we set ourselves up for success? If what we want is the toilet training and we want the pee in the potty, what can we do to make that happen? What we don't realize sometimes is that there are EOs all the time, and that we sometimes have an establishing operation, which is the thing that guarantees the success of a behavior we don't want. Oh no. What could that possibly be? Like when we say to ourselves, and how many times have I done this, we're shopping and it's noon, and noon is the established lunchtime for this particular child and for this particular adult. And we're shopping and we should go home or should go someplace and eat. And instead we say, I'm just going to power through. How many times have you done this, right? Is it just me? It might just be me. And I say, okay, I'm just going to power through this and we'll eat lunch a little bit late. And then all of a sudden it's 1:30 and we should have eaten at noon. And so now I've created an establishing operation in which I am more likely to be what? Crabby, and that my child is more likely to have a tantrum. Because we're overwhelmed, we've not had anything to drink, and we haven't had something to eat. So, that's, and of course I didn't do it deliberately, right? No judgments. If you've ever done that, and hopefully you're not judging me, but I have done it before. But we set ourselves up sometimes think of it as setting ourselves up for success. But what is the success we want? Do we want success in creating tantrums, or do we want success in creating opportunities to learn new skills and have children who are compliant and happy and enjoying themselves and learning? So you will see from time to time if you're doing ABA, and I use the skills program at home. My son had 5 years of intensive ABA from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. He graduated, but I still use the skills program. And you'll see that from time to time when they're talking about a lesson and teaching it, they'll say EO, and they'll talk about the circumstances that will be helpful in creating success. So that's your establishing operation, is something that in the environment, or it could be internally, that sets up circumstances in which we're more likely to see a behavior. And somebody wrote in and said that you're watching from Appleton, Wisconsin. Fabulous. I love that. Appleton. That sounds like a wonderful place. I'm from upstate New York originally, and this time of year I start craving apples. And I'm wondering if in Appleton you have lots of orchards. So if you think of it and if you want to share back, love to know if you've got lots of apples in Appleton, Wisconsin. Okay. And I love that you are watching on a communication device. Fabulous. We love that. Okay, so establishing operation, and if you still don't have it after our discussion, don't worry, because it's one of those things that until you have a moment where you see it with your own child, I don't think it gets completely crystal clear. But then when you see it, you'll recognize it and you'll go, oh, okay. I can definitely see why creating this establishing operation is going to make it more likely that we're going to be successful with this particular lesson. All right. And you'll also start to notice times when you've set yourself up for a successful failure. Let's say that. We always like to keep it positive. Okay, we always have a question of the day for you. The question of the day is meant to get you thinking and get you participating and talking to each other. And I love this one today. We've talked all week long about challenging behavior, right? And we do have to focus on that sometimes because we're going to run into challenging behavior. We absolutely are. But every once in a while, we got to stop and assess what's really going on and how, if there's stuff to be grateful for, and I guarantee you there's something to be grateful for. So my question today is, how does your child show love? And you know, I remember having a conversation with somebody about this a couple of years ago. And I was sort of on the side of the conversation. It was two autism moms, and I was the third, and they were women that I didn't know particularly well. But one of them was in a bad place and saying, you know, all I ever wanted, we've all had that thought at some moment, all I ever wanted was this, this, and this, fill in the blank, right? You know, for me it was that what I wanted was to be able to have deep philosophical conversations with my child. That, you know, I wanted to have this baby that we appreciated and discovered the world together, and then as he got older, I wanted to have deep philosophical conversations and argue about things that were, there was no right answer. I was so looking forward to that with all of my children. I only have one child. And then, of course, that didn't happen for me, It does now. A whole lot of work was done, and a whole lot of people helped, and my son worked so hard, and I am able, he is 9 now, and we do have deep philosophical conversations, and we discover the world together now. It wasn't so much that way when he was 2, when I had planned on it, right? But, we've found our way. A lot of work. But one of these moms in this conversation was saying, I just longed for a really affectionate child. That was what I was looking forward to, was a child who hugged me and that I had unconditional love. I saw that with so many other moms, and it was something that I was really looking forward to, and I don't have that, and I don't know that I'm ever going to have that. And the other mom said, I totally appreciate that it's not what you thought it was going to be, but is there a way that your child does show love? And it was just a really interesting moment, and I'll never forget it as long as I live, because the other mom, everything changed physically, and she said, well, of course my child shows me love. They just do it in a way that I've never recognized from another child before. But things just shifted. And she realized, but I am aware that my child loves me, and that the child shows it in this way. And of course, I don't remember the way that was that the child, but I just remember physically that mom changed. I think it's a good question for us to ask ourselves all the time. How does your child show love? My child is so funny because we have the most interesting relationship where he hates to compliment me. I don't know why. I don't know how that started, but there is a thing that he really doesn't want to compliment me. But I know that he loves me, and he's very affectionate, very, very affectionate. But it's very funny because, I'll try to get a compliment for something. If I cook him something he really likes or whatever, and he always likes to talk about his dad and say, well, Dad's really good at this. And I'll say to him, is there anything at all that Mom's really good at? And for the longest time, he would say, no, not really. I mean, you're okay at some things, but Dad's better at this and Dad's better at that. And I will say I've had to go away twice now for just 2 days each time. And it pained me. I'd never, ever left my child. But I needed to go and do a couple of things, and I knew he would be okay. And my husband was there, and one of the weekends, my mom came to be there with him. He was going to have a wonderful time. And I will say that because I went away those 2 times, he has a different appreciation for Mom, and he's very slowly starting to tell me the things that I do that he appreciates. I just didn't know that that was ever going to happen. And of course, it makes me consider going away again, but I really like to be home. I'm a homebody. But he is very affectionate. My child is a hugabus, and I appreciate that. He is somebody who likes to cuddle, and that is a good thing for him, and it's a good thing for us. But I'd love to hear from you. How does your child show love? All right. We also have a topic of the day, and as you know, I've already given it away. Our topic of the entire week this week is and was challenging behavior. I think, the biggest, we've tried to talk about things that we can do, and we're going to continue talking about that today. But the biggest thing that I hope that we all know, myself included, because I do have to be reminded of this from time to time, is that while we will experience challenging behavior from our children, we have the ability to change behavior. We absolutely do. If we use the tools of ABA and we create certain circumstances and we create certain consequences and we adjust a little thing here and a little thing there, we are able to change behavior. That if there is any behavior that you are sitting at home right now and thinking, oh my gosh, there's just, somebody wrote in the other day and said that their child pulls her hair and her daughter's hair and said, oh, If that could stop, life would be so much better. And I think we all have or have had at some point at least one of those things that you just think, oh man, if that doesn't stop, I don't know, you know? It's so wearing and grating and disheartening and disturbing and, you know, fill in the blank. We can change all of those behaviors for the better. We really can. Whatever it is, you know, and there's some tough behaviors out there. I'm not going to tell you that it's like boom and they all change. There are some things that would take some time and some effort, but all of those behaviors can be changed for the better. We can make progress on all of them. So I hope, stick around. We're going to talk about a lot of different things today. One of the things, we're going to take on an academic tip here in just a few minutes. At 10:20 today, we are going to be joined by a guest, Eric Peacock, via Skype. Eric is one of the co-founders of My Autism Team. And this is a really exciting new cutting-edge service that is available to you online to help you to be able to pick people to work with your child based on reviews that other people have written, so that you don't have to be, you can connect with other parents, you don't have to guess. So you're definitely going to want to tune in for that. I'm really excited to talk to Eric about how this has come about and how it can help those of you at home. And then at 11 o'clock, oh my goodness, Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, who is the head of research and development at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. He is also the director of the Autism Research Group. And you guys should really know about the Autism Research Group because they're an amazing organization that does research on autism, but they pick their studies based on things that parents ask for. How many times have you been someplace, heard about some study that they did about autism and wondered to yourself, how much money did they spend on that? Because if you were going to do a study, maybe you could have asked me and we could have come up with something that was of any use to somebody, right? I know I felt that way when they came out. There were 2 studies that came out earlier this year about cigarette smoking. One that said conclusively that it has no impact. If a pregnant woman is smoking, it has no impact on whether her child has autism or not. And then another one that said it potentially did because of some of the hazardous materials. And I said, really? Seriously? That somebody wasted time? No one should be smoking while they're pregnant. Come on. Like, we really spent money and time when we could have been looking at something else. Really? I was not happy about that. You know, because there hasn't enough research been shown that there are so many negatives to smoking, period. But when you're pregnant, oh my goodness. All right. I need to take a breath, right? It's Friday. I can't get this upset about it. But I love that the Autism Research Group says our mission is to do research that is substantive to the families that are dealing with autism now. Gotta love that. So Dr. Tarbox is going to be here, and we've asked him to come in and told him that our topic is challenging behavior, but we welcome questions from you. If you know that you're not going to be here at 11 o'clock Pacific time, write your questions in now. We'll ask them, and then you can watch it later on YouTube or Blip TV. So ask away. What do you want to know about challenging behavior? We're going to take a short break. When we come back, I believe that we're starting, yes, with the academic tip of the week. So stick with us.
Hi, we're here today with Cecilia Knight, who is the Director of Training for the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And today I'm thrilled to have her here because we're going to talk about manding. What is manding?
A request that you would make of another person.
Why is manding one of the first things that seems to come up in most programs?
Okay. Well, a baby requests for his mother's attention by crying or by reaching. And so it's one of the first ways that you let another person know what you need. And then that other person reinforces you by either picking you up or giving you something to drink or something to eat. And so many of our clients aren't really good at that once we start a program with them. And unfortunately, many of them engage in inappropriate manding, screaming, kicking, biting. And so what we're trying to do early on is no longer reinforce the inappropriate ways of asking and rather reinforce the appropriate ways of asking. And as we teach them an appropriate way to ask for, Mom, play with me, can I have juice, or, even more simply, help, then we see those inappropriate demands decreasing and the appropriate demands increasing, because the child's wants and their desires aren't really changing, but we're teaching them the right way to get their needs met.
So manding doesn't have to actually be spoken. It can be nonverbal as well.
And that's exactly right. They could exchange an icon. And if I bring you an icon with a cup on it and hand it to you, and you bring me a juice cup, then we've made an exchange. And so there is what Skinner would call verbal behavior. You have reinforced my request for a cup or for juice.
So when we say verbal behavior, we're not talking about vocal behavior necessarily.
That's right.
It's just that it's a conversation of some sort.
What is reinforcing to the child? The demand is evoked by the child's desire or their need for something. So early on, we may arrange the situation where I know that they're interested in the juice and they're reaching for it. I may hold it back to just say juice or ja or whatever is appropriate for that child. And then as soon as they emit any sort of response, give a high level of praise and then immediately give them the juice. But what controls the demand is that specific reinforcer. So of course, if the child asks for a juice cup and you bring something else, then they're not being reinforced with what they asked to have.
Okay. What do you want?
Good job.
You say wafer, please. Wafer, please. Good talking. Thank you, Dad. Thank you, Daddy.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. And I've lost my screen here. I'll have to refresh. But in any case, there we go. I wanted to put up the Appleton, Wisconsin. We had somebody who wrote in and said that they're watching from Appleton. I want all of you to see that. Very, very cool. Okay, it's time for us to talk about our academic skills tip for the week. And, it's so important that we prepare our children for school. And, there's so much on the list to do that it's endless. But we've heard all the studies about how important it is for kids that are neurotypical to go to preschool and start to build the different skill level that they need before they get to kindergarten. And we've heard the success, kids who go to preschool are more likely to go on to college, you name it, and so on and so forth. And they run public service announcements in every city around the world talking about the importance of those preschool skills. And it's an important time for kids. For our kids on the autism spectrum, they're usually, I don't want to speak in total generalities, but a lot of times they're already behind. So that going to preschool and learning the kinds of things that they need to learn in preschool, while that's still important, they don't even have the basics to learn that. And we really want to be mindful about doing things, teaching lessons that we've already done the prerequisite on, right? You do this in college. You go to take a class and there are prerequisites for it that you can't take the class unless you've taken this other class and successfully passed it. Well, there are those kinds of prerequisites for our kids as well. And if you need help and support to get your child caught up, no matter what age they're in, what grade they're in or what age they are, if you have an 8-year-old child that is not functioning completely at a third grade level, but has some skills at a third grade level, but other things are second grade level, and some things are kindergarten, and some things are pre-K, your child is still going to third grade, right? More than likely. They've put them in third grade, but you're feeling the frustration of, there are things that my child doesn't have, and each year they're getting further and further behind. This is one of the reasons why we continue to use the skills program at home, because it has concise lessons in a single place where you take the assessment. You don't have to guess which skills your child needs to fill in. It will tell you based on your answers to very simple questions, so that you can go back and fill in those skills. And if you have a child that's 3 and you're getting ready to go to preschool and want to start to help them with some of these concepts, it has them there as well. The academic curriculum in skills is not meant to take the place of preschool or kindergarten or first grade or anything beyond that. It's meant to supplement and help you to get the child caught up. And one of the set of lessons that's in there have to deal with teaching numbers and quantities and the language around quantities. And this is what's really ingenious to me as I looked at it, because when we see a child who's typically developing and they learn the numbers, and then at some point they learn to associate the spoken word, the 1, 2, 3 in sequence, with an actual representation, the number 1 and the number 2, what that looks like. But then they also have to learn that 1 stands for a certain amount of quantity, that this is 1, and that now I have 2, and that there is language surrounding, whether there's 1 or 2, that we have some and many and few and all of those different things. Now, a typically developing child will have some difficulty with that, and they'll need some instruction. It doesn't all just happen magically, but they'll pick it up fairly quickly, except when they don't. But a lot of them will pick that up and just, it sort of gels and coheses all on its own. But some of those typically developing kids, it doesn't. Right? And maybe they have one component of that. Maybe they can recognize the numerical 1, 2, 3, but the sequence isn't necessarily in order. They can do 1, 2, 3, but then they're 7, 8, 9, and then where did the 4 and the 5 go? Or let's say that a child understands the quantity, that this is 1 and that this is 2, but they don't recognize the numerical number. And other kids, it's like fill in the blank. What don't they get? But all of these things have to piece together to understand counting, numerical numbers, quantity, and quantitative concepts and quantitative language. It's a lot to expect a child to get just moving through their life. And I think rarer that a child completely gets it on their own. I think all children need some sort of support to get all components of that. And certainly our kids on the autism spectrum. Sometimes our kids on the autism spectrum are very number oriented, and sometimes they're great with numbers, but we don't even know that until they begin to have some of these skills. So figuring out how to teach these things to them is really important, because once they start to get these concepts, a lot of times then we see a strength emerge. But until they begin to get it, we're not going to see that. So talk about untapped potential. It can really be an amazing thing. And what I love about with ABA and with skills is that we do separate these things into very specific lessons. So right now we're working on the concept of quantity, and we're going to teach that this is 1 and this is 1 and this is 1, and then we're going to teach that these together are 2. And work our way up and constantly be pairing it with the numerical representation so that the child begins to get, okay, this 2 is the same as a written 2. And then later on we can work into those quantitative concepts and the quantitative language of some and few and many and very, right? And then get into, size language, small and big and little, and beginning to understand that it's all relative. That if you take these two things together and say which one is bigger, well, this one is bigger, but if I take something else, is this actually big? If I put this next to an elephant, is it big? It's relative, and it depends on your perception. Do you see how, and our kids who are on the spectrum, we know that this is a component that is often weak or not there. The ability to be able to look at things from different perspectives. But if we start early enough, this lesson turns into yet another place where we can look at shifting perspectives and say, I have this conversation with my son all the time. Well, it's all relative, because he'll say something to me about, is so-and-so old? My mother won't appreciate this, but when my mother was visiting last, there were things she kept wanting to do. She kept wanting to lift things and move things and do things and work. And I kept on saying, what are you doing? She lifted an ironing board up and was carrying it into my house. And I said to her, what are you doing? Stop that. And on a couple of occasions, I said to her, you're not allowed to do that anymore. You're old, right? Because we have that kind of relationship. And of course, my son was saying, Mom, you tell me all the time not to tell people that they're old, right? So we had to have that conversation. About, well, I shouldn't have called her old, but, Grandma needs to realize that she can't do everything that a 22-year-old can do, for heaven's sake. But so then he started asking a lot of questions about, well, what really is old? And we constantly talk about it. Well, it depends on your perspective. That, that he's 9, and that there are some kids that he plays with that think he's one of the older kids. He's one of the bigger boys. And then he goes to another function that we're at where they have teenagers, and he's one of the little boys. So it depends on the view of the person who is using the word. And he gets it. He totally gets it. It isn't necessarily his first thought, but once you explain it to him, he gets it. And sometimes it is his first thought. So in any case, back to numbers and numerical concepts and quantitative language. These are holes that can be present in our child that if we fill them in, it's that Swiss cheese thing. You fill in the hole, and then the child has places that they can go with that new knowledge. And we can go back and teach. If somebody is 12 and they don't understand the numerical concepts, we can take these lessons and go back and teach it to them. Really, really important that we take the time to do that. Okay, I'm going to take a break and then we'll come back because we have an answer that they don't have apple trees in Appleton. This is an outrage. It's okay, and we'll take a second to read this and we'll come back and talk about it. And we also have an IEP tip coming up, so stick with us.
Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, and this is my son, Jem. We're here today at the Home Depot. You might know that Home Depot is famous for giving free classes to adults on lots of things like tiling and other home crafts. Well, they also have free classes for kids as well. It's called the Kids Workshop. We love doing that, don't we, Jem?
Yeah.
It's cool. So come on inside with us and let's do a craft.
Yay.
The Kids Workshop is a program that's been around with Home Depot almost since we've been a company, and it's been developed to allow kids in the community to come in and give them an opportunity to build something, to be able to create something and be able to take just simple wood pieces and put them together with nails and hammers and screwdrivers and then paint them.
So you do this every first Saturday of the month.
Any Home Depot that you go to on the first Saturday of every month between 9 and 12, you can join different associates throughout different stores and build these projects with these kids.
And do they have to do anything beforehand, or can they just show up on that Saturday?
All they need to do is show up. We have all the tools, all the materials that the kids will need. We have aprons that we give to the kids that they can take home and maintain their pins. They get pins on a regular basis for completing projects. With that, they can keep track of how many projects they've done. And
it's all free.
It's all absolutely free. All
Which is
provided.
wonderful. And Wilson, I have to say, you guys devised this for all kids to be able to do this.
Correct.
What I particularly love about it as an autism mom, it gives my child a place to come and learn a new skill, to socialize with kids of all kinds.
Absolutely. And that's what we're here for. Home Depot is definitely loves to be involved with the community and bring the community in to work with us. That's what we love to do.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. We're about to do an IEP tip, but we had a comment that came through just before we went to break. Earlier I said you can write in and say where you're watching from, and we had somebody write in and say that they were from Appleton, Wisconsin, and I said, Appleton, you must have apples there. I'd love to know. And the response was, no, we don't have any apple trees. I think that's a huge bummer. I'm wondering if there were apple trees once upon a time. But the person wrote in and said that they are about to start 12th grade. Congratulations to you. And this is somebody who had asked recently if they could be on the show, and that they have a children's book about using a communication device, and that they have a website. And you actually had written into us, and I was just talking to Emily during the break. I swear that I wrote back to you. So if you didn't get a response from me, then something is horribly wrong. I would ask you to check your Facebook and check your email, because I don't know whether I responded to your email or your Facebook. But yes, we would love to have you on the show. And what I sent was to say, you know, what's your availability? We would love to have you Skype into the show. So let us know when you're available. We're on from 9 in the morning till noon Pacific Standard Time. And if you're going to be in 12th grade, I don't want for you to miss school to be on, but we would love to have you be on the show. I think that would be really exciting. Yes. And then you just put in your name, and I appreciate that, which I'm not going to show to the people at home. But, you know, when you're on the show, you can talk about that. But I know that I answered. So if it didn't get to you, that's a problem, and we'll have to figure that out. But we would love, excuse me, there's my frog in the throat that comes this time every morning. We would love to have you on the show. I think that would be really fun. All right, it is time for the IEP tip of the week. The IEP is the Individualized Education Plan or Program that your child has in place, that is a legal document that says what services your child is going to get for the year. And it also says what your child's individual goals are, what the educational goals are in each and every area that your child is going to receive instructions. So if your child is attending OT, occupational therapy, you'll have OT goals that may have to do with fine motor, may have to do with gross motor activities that your child is going to do. And you'll see that usually there's a separate page for each goal, and they'll put it in language and say that by this date the child will be able to do this as measured by so-and-so in 3 out of 5 trials, or whatever it is. And then on your child's report card, alongside your child's report card, you should get back a progress report on each and every one of your child's goals that says we're making progress, we're not making progress, we've already attained the goal, whatever it is. But that is a legal document, and everybody who works with your child has to uphold the legal document, and those are the things that they are tasked with teaching your child. And there's all kinds of things that are in an IEP, and there may be things attached to the IEP. For instance, if your child has any kind of behavior issues at all, hopefully you've asked them to do an FBA, a functional behavior assessment, to find the function of the behavior. And at that time, they sat down, the IEP team, with you and came up with a behavior intervention plan, which everybody agreed to and signed off, and then it was attached to the IEP and now becomes a part of that document, which means that everybody involved on the team has to uphold what that behavior intervention plan is. How many times this year have we had to report on things that have happened in schools because a child has been treated in a way that is just unbelievable and unacceptable, right? From the teacher, the substitute teacher who was pinching the child's ears because the child was going around and touching all the other children's ears. It was something that they do as a sensory thing, and the substitute teacher didn't understand it, so she started pinching his ears to say to him, well, how do you like it? And of course, my first question is, well, what was in the BIP, the BIP? Because I'm just going to guess that if there was a BIP, it did not say that she could pinch his ears. And when you have a BIP, that kind of stuff shouldn't happen. And if it does happen, ooh, automatic, you win the lawsuit, right? That BIP is super duper important. But so are the goals. You know, one of the biggest things that we hear from families, it's so difficult, and trust me, I know, anytime somebody says IEP, my blood pressure goes up 10 points. I keep saying to you guys on the show, I want to get to the point where everybody is trained enough, parents and teachers and administrators, so that nobody needs to be stressed. It should be a happy thing where everybody sits down and says, we're going to do the best possible thing for this child. Or at least the most appropriate thing, which is the legal term that we have to go by, the most appropriate thing for this child. And everybody leaves and is happy. That happens sometimes. It needs to happen all the time, if not most of the time. But in any case, it's one of those things where people, because as parents, a lot of times, and even as a former teacher, I never feel like I can possibly ever be prepared enough. That's always my fear, that I don't know enough, right? And for teachers, you know, they want to be helpful, but, you know, there's a whole lot of different considerations. And for the administrators, let's face it, they're facing money considerations, right? They can't talk about that at the IEP. That is not allowed. That is illegal for them to say, well, we can't afford that. If you catch that on a tape recorder, oh my. But my point is, this document is so important. It's your roadmap to success, hopefully, if the time has been put in and it's been done correctly. But in any case, it is your absolute safety net. Whatever they put on that document that you signed off is what they have to put out. And if they don't, they are what is deemed not compliant. And you have causation. This is, you know, we hear people say it's time to lawyer up. It may be time to lawyer up, or just to say you are not in compliance. And when a school hears that, they know they got to move. Otherwise, lawyers are about to come along. And they don't want that. That's expensive and time consuming and bad publicity, right? So this document, super duper important. And in our lives of autism, when we're bombarded by paperwork, the paperwork of autism, I mean, the paperwork of life, right? But then throw a truckload of more paper on top because of autism, you go, ugh, right? But I would say to you that that IEP is one of the most important documents. You need to know where it is at all times. I know, and people that I've known over the years have dealt with this in different ways. I know somebody who has it in a plastic, one of those sheet protector things, and it is duct taped to their wall so that if they have a question, they know exactly where it is. It's not in some file cabinet that's drawing dust. It is duct taped to the wall in a sheet protector, so they know exactly where it is. When we first started on the journey through autism, we went to a workshop, and in our area, there's a group that puts together and gives out huge binders that have the separators already in it and has a hole punch already attached to it, and they give one to every single parent, and it has a little tab that says medical history and assessments, and then it says IEP and, you know, reports and things like that, so that you don't have to think. You just put the little holes in it that's attached to the binder, and you stick it into the binder. I keep threatening someday I'm going to bring in the binder from the first year, which is literally like this thick with papers overflowing. One of the things that Autism Speaks recommends, and I couldn't afford it when they recommended this first, where we were in our journey, they recommend that you get a heavy-duty scanner, something that you can put 50 pages at a time and scan it into your computer. I think that that's a really good idea, but unfortunately then you still have to have a program that reads and separates papers into files, because you're still going to have to go through the files on your computer. Yeah, it's less mess and it's less of a fire hazard, but you still have to be able to find that specific document. It's usually a good 30 to 45, potentially more pages long. We're not talking about a 2 little sheet of paper thing. It's a hefty little thing, but you need to know where your IEP is, because you can't memorize it. That's an unrealistic expectation. But I would say a couple of times a year to consult it, whenever you have an issue at school, to consult it and to look at your BIP and see, does this still apply to my child? Do these goals apply to my child? But know where it is. Know where it is. It's like your birth certificate. You know, it's an important piece of paper. You're not going to need it every day of your life, but when somebody says, we need your birth certificate, you need to be able to find it like that. So where would you keep your birth certificate? You know, I would put the IEP someplace as safe and as recognizable so that you could find it, and if somebody else needed to find it, you could say to them, I want you to go here in my living room, and that's where the IEP is. That's how important this document is for your child. So that's our IEP tip for the week. We're going to now switch gears and go to the A Word. This is the wonderful documentary being made here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders following a little boy, Jack Riley, who was diagnosed with autism at the age of 2. He's now 3. And we've gone back to the first few episodes. In fact, what we're going to show today is the second episode, where the family has already gotten the diagnosis and they've started the process of getting their funding so that they can get ABA. They've already been evaluated by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders, and now they're waiting for the funding to come in from their funding source so that they can start. It is the 7th ring of hell waiting. So take a look. This is the A Word.
If everybody's agreed and held hands that early intervention is key, then I can't imagine why. If the original center knew on November 2nd that they didn't speak or make much noise at all during the evaluation, they knew that on that day. I can't comprehend for the life of me why it would even take a month to start speech therapy. That doesn't make any sense to me.
The waiting's hard.
The waiting's really hard. We read things about how the brain is so much more valuable the younger they are. You know, every day that ticks by just seems like a waste of time. You know, you go on the websites and you read all these things, and there's kind of a club, I think, of moms who call themselves autism warriors. And I hated that word when I first read it. I hated it. I still do. Because I don't, you know, there's a lot of things I wanted to fight for, but I didn't have to fight for autism.
Yeah. It's okay, man. We're lucky in that he sprints to mom.
Okay, this is how my son reacts to me coming home. Oh, Jack Riley. Hi! Mommy's home! Mommy's home! Hello!
When he sprints to me when I get home, and he kisses you and hugs you. Where's my son?
One of the first people that I told when we got the diagnosis was a good friend of mine who knew somebody who had an adopted son who has autism. I had not only fought the fight, I mean, talk about autism warrior, this woman founded a whole foundation and was extremely active and extremely knowledgeable, and my friend put me on the phone with her. She was the one who turned me on to both ABA and to CARD, and to tell me how valuable it was, and we're very grateful for it, because
yes.
we realized that had we not been given information, we never would have known. The original center would not have recommended that for us. So it required us to really push to get what we wanted. And I didn't know even until I asked the question if I had a choice. I thought this was great advice. Don't ever feel that you're at the mercy of the regional center because they're paying for your services. She told me, you're paying for your services. They're using tax money to do this, and you've paid taxes. Intake at CARD was actually a much more pleasant experience than the regional center evaluation. I think in part because we'd been through it once and it wasn't as scary for us. It was a good experience for us because we felt like our son was himself. He had all the same things going on as far as autism is concerned, but he was still bright and happy and affectionate. I felt like he showed them both his good sides and the sides that he needs to work on. So for us it felt good because we felt like at least people were seeing what we see. I felt maybe for the first time that they got it, that it's like, okay, he is this way, this is what he's got going on, but we can make this better. At first, it was exhausting to think that every single thing was a teaching moment. That every single thing that he did, and I know that, you know, I would say something to him and he'd be like, really? Can we just feed him? Can we just feed him dinner and we don't have to worry about it? But now even that's not as exhausting because it's sort of starting to become more natural for us, so that it doesn't feel as awful.
But I remember feeling guilty just for being with him all day, and then, you know, just sort of sneak the TV on to Sports Center in the afternoon, and he's playing with his Legos, and I just back up and lean against the sofa with him between my feet, but I wasn't really watching him. I would just try to watch Sports Center for a few minutes, and then I'd always feel guilty and try to get over that. So
no more guilt.
I think we're teammates. That's the best thing. Is I feel like she's on my side. I'm on her side.
We sort of, we've been lucky that my weak moments are his strong moments.
Well, on a personal note, is the camera still on?
It is.
On a personal note, I would be lost. She really dove in, and I mean, I've Googled autism, and I still don't understand it until she explains it to me.
Which is scary because I don't really understand it.
Well, that's the point. But she dives to the next step, and I'm just starting to understand the last step, and she's trying to explain the next step. And I told her last night I would be lost if she wasn't doing that, because I wouldn't. I don't think I could. Sometimes I'm reading these things and it just floats over me because I go numb again reading about it.
Well, I think in fairness, I think one person in each family has to take that role, because I don't think you can both drive. I think there's always somebody in every family who just takes that role.
Yeah. If somebody takes charge, take a back seat. That's the moral of that. Sending that to me.
Welcome back. So that is the A Word. A really amazing series. You know, you have the opportunity to watch these episodes whenever you want. They have their own YouTube channel. So I want to encourage you to go, and you've just seen the second episode. If you want, go back and watch the first episode. But then I encourage you to skip around and watch a little in the future to see the kinds of things that Jack Riley is working on right now. I always say that I love that we get to see the arc of ABA. I think there's so much that's misunderstood about ABA out in the world, and I have to remember when we hadn't done ABA, and I'd read a couple of books about ABA. I still kept saying, I want to know what's it going to look like in my house. What is it going to look like in my house? And it's different with all kids, right? Because they're going to work on different lessons that are specific to where they need to gain skills. But there are a lot of similarities too. And as you watch Jack Riley, it reminds me so much of when we had ABA in our house. And what's amazing about it, that I so wish that we had had the A Word when we were starting out, because to be able to see how 1 week they'll start and they'll work on a skill that is just, you just think, really? Is that what we're going to spend our time on? Because is that going to be helpful in the long run? Because you can't see the big picture. Or you don't see this. Not that you can't, because you can now, but you don't see the big picture about it. And I've told the story before about how my mom came to visit after we'd been doing ABA for a while. And in our house, the way we set it up was, because the rooms we were in a little teeny tiny condo, and the rooms were so small, so my mother and I would go in the bedroom where the computer was, and I had the baby monitor set up so that I could watch and listen and try to get some work done. And I would make my mother come in there with me. So we're sitting in, you know, a very tiny space with a computer, and I'd be listening and watching and typing away. And my mom would listen too. She'd be sitting there knitting and crocheting and reading a book and doing whatever. And she would be listening too. And she would hear them doing a lesson with my son. And when you just listen to it out of context, you go, what on earth are they doing? And I remember at one point they were teaching my son different features of different animals, because that's a lesson about features, like, you know, what are wings and beaks, and recognize them. And my son still, you know, his language was coming along and he was building up his labels and things like that, but his spontaneous language just wasn't there. And my mother was very, very concerned about that. And so, she heard the first therapist come in the morning and sit down and work on, and they would put a little toy Fisher-Price from the Noah's Ark thing and say, touch the beak. And so he would touch the little toucan's beak, and they had to prompt him to do it first. And she was like, why are they teaching him about beaks? Let's teach this boy to speak, right? And then, they would do this over and over. Touch the beak. Oh, good job. Touch the beak. And she was sitting there thinking, man, did you get taken in this deal? This is what they're doing with your child. And initially, I had questions about it too. But then by the end of the week, the beak had gone into the wings, had gone into claws, had gone into, having a mane, all these different things that were put together with a bunch of other lessons so that they got to the point where they put a picture of a horse down on the table and the therapist said, tell me 3 things about a horse. And my son said, whoa, it has hooves, it has a mane, and it has teeth, right? And my mother went, oh my goodness, listen to him talking, how these things get put together. But you have to go back and pick up the little threads. You're knitting a sweater, and you need to have all the threads or you're not going to get a finished product. And sometimes that's painstaking and exacting and frustrating because you want to run and you got to crawl first. But it's amazing now. There are enough episodes of the A Word that you really can see the arc. I love to see the eye contact that Jack Riley makes and go back and look at the ways in which that happened and his ability to make joint attention, that he's looking at something and he looks at you to see, are you appreciating this too? And he looks back at it and looks at you and says, did you see it? And how that leads to so many other things, to him being more interested in the people around him than his stuff, than the things, right? That he didn't know how to gain attention appropriately. And so they went through the process of teaching him the way that they decided, the family decided they wanted him to appropriately ask for attention, and how they taught it to him. And now he's using it. And this whole big arc, so that now we have this little boy who's speaking in sentences spontaneously and interacting with people and noticing things in his environment and saying what he needs and what he wants. It's really very incredible. So I encourage you to watch it. I encourage you to ask questions. If you have questions about the A Word, because if you have questions for the family, if you have questions for the filmmaker, if you have questions for the therapist, Jessica is featured in the series. She is not his only therapist, but she is the one that's featured in the series. And she was one of my son's therapists. So, and she's a lovely, the soul of patience. My goodness. So anyway, I encourage you to participate, watch the A Word, ask questions, and we will get them to the right people and get you the answers that you want. It's really very incredible. And also to be watching the family's journey, the emotional I love both of these parents. I think that the mom, oh my goodness, I would love to have her patience. She's just one of those people that has that aura around her of just being somebody who's taken it as it comes. Always wanted to be that person. But I find myself relating to the dad a lot. That the dad, and what I love is that he's saying his feelings and saying, I'm frustrated here. I'm really, really frustrated. There's a bunch of strangers in my house. They are able to get my child to do things that I couldn't get him to do. You know, I want to learn about this, but man, sometimes it really tears my ticket. And I think that's incredibly honest and incredibly accurate, because there are times when it's frustrating. It's frustrating. And the fears that come up when, you know, at one point the child, Jack Riley, has been doing really well, making a whole lot of progress, and then he suddenly, out of nowhere, starts biting. And they have to do an FBA to figure out why he's biting and then do a behavior intervention. But it really takes the dad back. Because when a child makes 2 steps forward and then they take 2 steps back, man, oof, You feel it. And the dad says, you know, I'd gotten so filled with hope, and I pictured him going on dates, and I pictured him playing on his high school football team, and I pictured him going off to college, and then suddenly he started biting, and it was like the whole thing got put with a big question mark again. I relate, and I think a lot of you do too. So tune in, ask questions, and next week we'll watch a new episode, the 3rd episode, Therapy Starts. Really kind of amazing. All right, we have to take a break, but when we come back, don't go away, because we're going to be joined by Eric Peacock. He is one of the co-founders of My Autism Team. This is an amazing service that I think you guys are going to be really interested in, so stick with us.
Skills is a revolutionary web-based program that incorporates comprehensive assessment, curriculum design, progress tracking, and treatment evaluation for children with autism all in one place. Developed by the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. Our approach is based on over 40 years of research on the principles of learning and their application to improving the lives of children with autism. How does Skills work? Created with speed and simplicity in mind, Skills was modeled on an easy 3-step process. Step 1. Start assessment. Step 1 begins with our intelligent assessment system, which consists of a series of questions. This assessment is essential to identifying your child's level of skills compared to their typical peers across all areas of development. This includes assessing social, motor, language, adaptive, play, cognition, executive functions, and academic skills. Every skill has an assigned age, which indicates when the skill emerges during typical development. This means that each child is automatically presented only with lessons that are relevant to his or her age. Step 2. Choosing activities. It's now easier than ever to build an individualized treatment plan. In Step 2, you are presented with an individualized pool of activities that are directly linked to your student's assessment results. Each activity represents a specific skill that has been indicated by the assessment as needing to be taught. Activities are categorized by curriculum and then by lesson. There are 3 main types of skills: building blocks, fundamental, and expansion skills. Fundamental skills are necessary for successful everyday functioning. Building blocks are prerequisites to a fundamental skill. Expansion skills are non-essential skills, but may provide further enrichment in certain areas. After reviewing the activities available to you, you can quickly add your chosen activities to the treatment plan by simply checking the box and clicking the button. Step 3. Start treatment. Once you have selected and added the activities you want, you are ready to begin teaching. Skills provides you with all the tools necessary to design and manage an effective curriculum plan, such as printable activity guides that are customizable by the teacher, supplemental teaching aids including printable data sheets, teaching guides, visual aids, worksheets, and tracking forms, detailed IEP goals and benchmarks for each activity, brief and visually appealing video tutorials, a variety of treatment progress and clinical timeline charts, and lots more. And since Skills is completely web-based, everything you need is available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, in one easy-to-access location. Skills users even benefit from unlimited access to a support community, where they can ask questions and share ideas with a skills expert. Skills is always with you.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. Our guest right now is Eric Peacock. He is the co-founder and CEO of My Autism Team, and I'm really excited to talk to him. I've been talking to you guys about this for a couple of days now. I'm really excited to hear about this. So Eric, welcome to Autism Live.
Thanks for having me.
There you are. Tell us a little bit about My Autism Team and how this came about.
Sure. Well, My Autism Team is a social network for parents of kids with autism. It's a place for parents to meet other folks just like them who get what they're going through, who have kids kind of in the same space on the spectrum as them, and just learn from them. Our basic belief is that if your child's diagnosed with autism, it should be easy to find the best people around to help you, and often those are other parents.
Yeah, I agree. I absolutely agree. We talk a lot on the show about having a local support group and having a global support group, because there are things that you're going to want to ask other people, like who's the barber and who is the dentist that's going to be helpful. But then you want to talk to people who have the same kinds of behaviors going on in their household that you have on. And I was saying the other day that after being on your site, it looks like you guys are putting both that local support group and that global support group together in one place.
That's right. You can kind of think of us as a combination of Facebook, the social networking of Facebook, with a local search of a Yelp, but just for parents of kids with autism. So what happens is, you can talk to other parents. Let's say you've got a 5-year-old nonverbal child who can't sit under the lights in an office because it's too stimulating. That's very different from, say, a 15-year-old, very verbal child who engages independently. So you want to find other people who have a child like yours. And if that person's 3,000 miles away, what we found is our parents don't care. They just want to connect with those people and talk to them. Absolutely. So it's just like, we all use Facebook to connect with our friends we've known for a long time, to share little tidbits here and there. The same thing's happening on the site in terms of who you connect with and how you talk to them. That said, when you're looking for the dentist who understands a kid with a sensory processing disorder, or the swim teacher who will take a chance on your child, then you're starting to look for the parents near you. So you get both the local and the national aspect of it. And I'll say, we launched this just over a year ago, and the growth has just blown us away. So clearly we've struck a chord here.
Absolutely. I wanted to say, you're singing my song. These are exactly the kinds of things that we need and the resources that we need. Now, I'm curious because, excuse me, you're in the process of setting up a lot of these different sites for different issues, for health issues, correct?
Yes.
So it'll be My Health Team for, say, My Health Team for cancer, or My Health Team for diabetes, that kind of thing?
That's right, yeah. In fact, our next one's going to be for women going through breast cancer.
Oh, wow, that's incredible. I'm curious, though, but autism is your very first one that you created. Why? Why did you start with autism?
Well, autism's our baby. I have a nephew on the spectrum, and I saw firsthand what my brother and his wife went through. And I started, having this feeling like, I'm not an MD or a PhD, but I'm an internet guy. I had to be able to do something about this. And my co-founder, Mary, felt the same way. And so we started talking to a lot of parents of kids with autism. And they all said the same thing. They all said, God, I got this diagnosis, and I went and Googled like I've never Googled before.
Yeah.
Learned everything I could about this disease. But then I just had this instinct. Now that I know I'm supposed to do early intervention and this and that, I just want to find other parents like me and say, what did you do? Who did you use?
Yeah.
And that's where the whole thing broke down. The web was useless. And we just thought, in an age where you can find some guy you knew 20 years ago in high school in about 2 minutes on Facebook, but you can't find another parent of a child with autism just like yours, something's wrong. We ought to be able to solve that problem. And so we're, 1 in 88 kids are impacted by this. We just thought there's way too much suffering happening that's unnecessary. And if there's one thing that we can solve in the autism equation, it's putting you in touch with other people. I wish we could solve autism. That's not our forte. That's not something we can do. But I think we're making life a lot better for parents by helping them connect with others. So that's why we did it first. We just felt really compelled to do it.
Well, I love that. I think you're really in a sweet spot because this is something that we need. Now, let's get into the nuts and bolts of, so parents have heard about what this is. They're going to want to log on. How do they do that, Eric?
So go to myautismteam.com and join the site. It's free. When you join the site, you know, when you join Facebook, what are you asked? You're asked, where do you live? Where do you work? Where'd you go to school? And based off that, they go, oh, here's all these people you should know. Facebook's really good at reintroducing you to people you already know. Now, as I'm sure all of your viewers know, that's kind of worthless when your child's diagnosed with autism. There's a decent chance that nobody in your Facebook circle of friends know anything about autism, and sometimes worse, they weigh in places that are inappropriate because they just don't get it.
Yeah.
So when you join my autism team, we ask you information about your child, and you can share whatever you want. You can use pseudonyms or your real name. You can use no pictures or real pictures. Most people share real pictures because this is just the site for parents of kids with autism.
Yeah.
And you can say, you know, I have a 9-year-old. He's nonverbal. He independently engages, you know, he has repetitive motions or fixates something, whatever the kind of sets of behaviors are that you want to line up with other parents like you can share that. But then you can just jump right in and you can easily search for other parents who are near you or who have a child with all the same developmental needs as your child. And then you can reach out to them. That's what people expect you and want you to do.
Absolutely. I'm on your site right now, and what I love that I think is so smart, Eric, is that there's a button there that says sign up now. And by the way, we should mention, what is the cost of this?
It's free. It's definitely free.
Wanted to make sure that everybody knew that. It's free. We love free. But once you hit that button for the sign up now, you go in the first place that you're given. It says minimum information, and that's just a couple of things that you need to put in. You're putting in your name or your screen name, your email password, your email address and your password, and that's all that's there. But then if you scroll down, you have the option of putting in those other things that you were saying.
That's right. Most people sign in and share a whole lot up front, but there's a lot of people who sign in with the minimum information and just want to see the thing first. They want to make sure it's legit, and that's totally fine. You share what you want to share as you go. We frequently see that the people who just sign in with their email address, about a week later, they'll start to share a lot. Because
yeah, absolutely. I can see that.
This is what's fundamentally different about this. On the web, there are lots of Q&A forums and discussion boards, and then there's listservs. And you know what? They just don't meet the needs of parents of kids with autism.
Yeah.
What they want is, if they're going to ask a question, they want to know who that person is on the other side.
Yeah.
So we are first and foremost a social network where you're building real relationships with people. And the beauty of that is you'd be surprised at how quickly all the drama goes away and the controversy goes away. Because when it's a real person, you know, your reputation matters and you're caring about the other people you're talking to. So we don't see these kind of flame wars about vaccines and stuff like that. It just doesn't happen here.
Well, absolutely wonderful. I think we should take a break and come back and talk about this more. And while we're in the break, I'm going to sign myself up so that we can see how easy it is. And we'll talk about that more when we come back and maybe even potentially tootle around the site for a second here. So stick with us. We're going to be back more with Eric Peacock, co-founder and CEO of My Autism Team. Stick with us.
I am Karen Driscoll. I'm a Marine Corps wife and mother of 3. My oldest son has autism. The strains on our typical military families are extraordinary. You add on the challenges of autism, access to care issues, and at times having to pay for effective treatments, and these families are pushed to the brink. We've lived in 5 different homes. That means 5 different medical communities, 5 different school districts, and 5 different state-run programs. The biggest challenge I face as a mother is going from bottom of wait list to bottom of wait list, never getting access to the effective services our children require. I feel like I'm constantly fighting for these services. We are working on a bill in Congress called the Caring for Military Kids with Autism Act that works to true up these policy deficits. You ask any service member overseas today, what can we do for you? They will always answer, please take care of my family at home.
Visit autismspeaks.org.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and our special guest right now is Eric Peacock. He is the co-founder and CEO of My Autism Team. You can find them at www.myautismteam.com. It's free. We've been talking with Eric about how you sign up, and in the time that we were gone, I signed up. That's how quick and easy it is. So that's a pretty fabulous thing. Oh, I didn't confirm my password. Don't give my personal information, Emily. She's showing it already. I rushed through things a little bit and I didn't confirm my password. But Eric, I want to hear from you about, this is a year old and you've already seen an explosion. What are your hopes for this site?
Yeah, just to put that in context, we launched this in June of 2011, so just over a year ago, and we started with 30 parents in the San Francisco Bay Area, which is where we are. And in 1 year, we went to 25,000 parents. And I think as of today, I haven't looked today, but I think it's at 27,500 or something like that.
That's amazing.
It is. So you can type in, if you go to Find Parents, you can type in any city and state in America, and now also Canada, and you're going to find parents within a 50-mile radius of you. You'll probably find a number. No matter where you type in, you'll find somebody. And it's been pretty amazing. So if you think about 27,000 parents, that's about, 2.5% maybe of all families in America with autism?
Yeah.
So we're just getting started. We fully expect this to get to 200,000. But that growth has just been extraordinary. And I think our goal is, where we'd like to see this go next is just, if this truly gets out to all parents, if you're in a waiting room of your occupational therapist or your speech therapist or your pediatrician, and you see other parents of kids with autism, tell them about the site, because other parents are the best source of information. They're the ones who share that information about the barber and the dentist and the swim instructor and the best schools. So the more people get on the site, the easier it becomes for other parents. And that's really our goal. We want to make it easy for you to find the best people around to help you.
And I'm now in, but Emily, I don't want you to show it because I don't know that people necessarily want their stuff broadcast everywhere, because there's a lot of information here that's absolutely amazing. And I see the functionality of this, Eric, and I'm really impressed with it because you can build your team of people and add people to your team so that you don't have to go back and hunt for them later on.
That's right. So you can add other parents, just like you follow someone on Twitter, but you can also add your providers. So typically what happens is a person comes on and they share their story, they share information about their child, again, to help them match up with other parents like them. But then you can share the OT, the speech therapist, the developmental pediatrician, the barber, the dentist, all the summer camp, all of the services and local providers that you have assembled, largely through trial and error, by the way,
right.
From what I hear from these parents, so that it's there for others to see. Mm-hmm. And there's nothing quite like that word-of-mouth referral.
Absolutely. And I've already, there's so many things that I want to look at, and you have all these search filters on here that I can search by the age of the child, I can search by their diagnosis, I can search in terms of where in the world that I want to look, or I can keep that open if I'm looking for different things. Yes. So really very user-friendly. I love how this is all laid out. It's absolutely spectacular. I have to ask you, so, I'm sure that you've had testimonials from people saying how this has helped them. What are some things that you've heard from your users?
Yeah, and this is the thing that keeps us going, and we put a lot of work into this. And every day, someone posts on this site or emails us and just says, thank you. I finally found a place where I can talk with other people who get it. That's the thing I hear over is that phrase, other people who get it. Yeah. Because while you can talk about and share your local providers, the way most people use this site is as a social network. Yeah. We all want to do social networking, and we want to do it about autism too. We just sure as heck don't want to do it on Facebook, where we constantly have to put things into context.
Right.
And so that, I think, is solving a big need for parents. You just want to be able to share little things during your day with other people who are going to respond and give you feedback on it. It's kind of like, when you go home and you talk to your wife about what happened at work, you just want someone to hear
yes.
what you're going through, who understands it.
Yeah,
and,
we all want to be seen and we all want to be heard. That's true of our children as well. So it's a wonderful, wonderful thing. And I see here that you have featured parents and newest parents. What does a parent do to be featured?
You know, parents who share their story, post a lot, share a lot, tend to get featured more because they just have so much to share with others.
Okay.
There's also a section, we do have a Q&A section where people ask and answer specific questions. In fact, this last week, we just passed 1,000 questions asked.
Wow.
And this really speaks to just how awesome the autism parent community is. We have a 95% answer rate, meaning any question that gets answered, that gets asked is going to get answered. And it's not being answered by me, it's being answered by other parents of autism. And so parents who do a lot of those, provide a lot of those answers that are then voted as useful by other parents, those folks would be featured as well.
Really wonderful, Eric. I gotta say, you're somebody who's really passionate about this. I can see that and I can feel that. What do you love the most about what you do?
When we started this, it was really clear that a lot of parents were frustrated. They're frustrated that they're just reinventing the wheel.
Mm-hmm.
And what I love about this is, I'm not an MD, I'm not a PhD, I'm a technology guy, I get social networking. And we just said it doesn't need to be like this. And we introduced this great application, this website, my autism team. And then the whole community just took it over. And I had ideas of how it would work, but I'm regularly proven wrong about how it should work. Because the parents show us how they want to use it. It's incredible. They want to have a huge section talking about IEPs, off they go. They talk about IEPs. If the topic of the day is nutrition or whatever it is, it's just, we don't have to set that, they do, and people start discussing it. And so I really think that we are making life better for them. I'll tell you the other thing I'm excited about is, the autism community has been woefully underserved, right? America's been racing to keep up with the epidemic that's autism.
Mm-hmm.
And we tend to think about it as just we got to get more ABA therapists. But I'm telling you, the whole market for autism is underserved.
Yes.
Training education is underserved. We had a lot of parents on the site asking questions like, what happens to my child if something happens to me?
Yeah.
And there's financial products for that. So now that I've got, a website with 27,000 parents of kids with autism, I want to use our strength and our numbers on our behalf, meaning the parents of kids with autism's behalf. And let me clarify, I'm not a parent of a child with autism. I didn't.
Oh, no, we understand. And you were very clear about that from the beginning.
Right.
And please know, I'm a parent of a child on the autism spectrum. And we acknowledge and know that there are people who are trying to help us. And we appreciate it.
Yeah.
So you don't have to apologize for that.
But what I want to do is, if I go talk to a big financial services provider, let's say Mass Mutual, who has a financial product for special needs kids, and I can say, let's tailor that to the needs of autism. Let's get a discount for all the parents on my autism team. That's how we can start to leverage our numbers on our behalf. So that's kind of what I'm interested in doing next.
Well, Eric, I'm glad you're on our team.
Well, thank you.
Because you're one smart cookie and you're doing great things. I want to say again, so for parents, this is absolutely free, that they can go in and participate and connect. Absolutely free. Tell us the website again, and we'll put it up on the screen.
It's myautismteam.com.
Okay. Now, you are also on Facebook, if people want to like you on Facebook, correct?
Yes. Facebook, and then just search for My Autism Team.
Okay, great. And I hope that a lot more people will, because the more people there that are using it, the more amazing it will become.
Yes.
Well, Eric, I hope that you'll check back with us from time to time and let us know when you've got big things going on or that you want to introduce, and we'll certainly be talking about you guys on a regular basis here to let people know that they can connect in this way.
Well, thank you so much. We just launched our iPhone app, and so we'll come back to you when we've got the Android app out.
Okay, because I'm Android, so let us know.
Okay.
But for our iPhone users, they can find that in their app store?
That's right.
Okay. Wonderful. Great idea. Thank you so much for being with us, Eric, and I hope you have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you, Shannon. You too.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
I absolutely love it. You know, I mean, there are smart, I say this to you guys all the time, there are smart people that are there in the world who are wanting to help us. It's a very humbling thing, but this is a wonderful site. So go check it out, myautismteam.com. We're going to take a break and come back with our social tip for the week, so stick with us. Currently, in the United States, 1 in 88 children is affected by autism. 1 in 88 means something different when your child is the one. Recovery is possible. Hi, I'm Shannon Penrod, host of Autism Live, an online show about autism broadcast by CARD, the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. I'm also the mother of a child with autism, my beautiful son, Jem. You know our old joke, guess what?
Chicken butt.
Chicken butt. So we're going to take the chickens. But things weren't always so easy. I remember when Jem was first diagnosed with autism. I used to lay awake at night in bed and pray for someone or something that could help us to get our child back. My prayers were answered by Dr. Doreen Grampichet and the Center for Autism and Related Disorders. CARD treats autism and other related disorders using the principles of ABA, Applied Behavior Analysis, which is the only scientifically proven effective treatment for autism. It is also recommended by the American Academy of Pediatrics and the U.S. Surgeon General. About a year after we started treatment with CARD, we were able to see tremendous improvement, and we got our child back.
What grade are you in?
Second.
You are a smart cookie, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Do you like school?
Yeah.
Do you have any good friends?
Yeah, Oscar.
Oscar is your best friend?
Yeah.
And my child is just one of thousands to benefit from CARD ABA therapy. Across the nation and around the world, children are making amazing progress and being given the keys to unlock their full potential.
We are extremely grateful for the amazing job CARD has done in helping our daughter. Our daughter today, just in 4 months, I think is a totally different child than when she started with CARD. I kind of see it as, it seems like her brain in a way was asleep, and now that we've gotten so many services, we've seen her wake up.
Did you have some glasses?
Recovery is possible if you take the right steps, if you're willing to put in all the hard work. And 7.5 years, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's worth every little bit, and CARD's been there with us every step of the way.
I have 2 children with autism. I can't imagine a day without CARD or the therapists. They've been so instrumental in helping us with our kids and shaping their lives and helping us help them.
Thank you, Christina Big Alex.
Thank you, Jackie and Mariana.
We've tried other things before ABA, but the most beneficial thing has been ABA services, and I'd be the first person to tell any newly diagnosed family that you have to contact an ABA provider, and if you're lucky enough to have CARD, you're very blessed.
Recovery from autism is absolutely a possibility. We've been recovering children for over 20 years. It's just a matter of identifying the child's medical needs, understanding the child's sensory issues, and then teaching the child all of the skills they need in order to function normally.
We know there's hope for autism. Autism is treatable, and recovery from autism is possible. Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod. We're webcasting to you live from the Center for Autism and Related Disorders headquarters in Tarzana, California. I wanted to get to some of the answers to the question of the day. We asked you guys, we've been asking you guys a lot of stuff about challenging behavior and, you know, what challenging behaviors would you like to change? What challenging behaviors have you been able to change? What time of day is hardest for you, and is it affected by your child's challenging behaviors? All those things, because we've been talking about challenging behaviors, and I thought for today we needed one a little bit more uplifting, right? So the question today was, how does your child show love? It's a good way to leave the weekend, right? And don't forget that at 11 o'clock, in just a few minutes, we're going to be joined by Dr. Jonathan Tarbox, and then we are going to talk about challenging behavior again. But somebody wrote in and said he comes up to you, to the answer to the question, how does your child show love? He comes up to you and gets close to your face and gives you butterfly kisses. I love that. You know, butterfly kisses, they're the ones with your eyelashes. It's very sweet. Another person who says lots of hugs and kisses. Somebody else who says he puts his face so close to mine and squeezes and hugs super tight. I love him so much, our little guy. Another person who says, my son gives too much love. Very touchy, very kissy, needs to be reminded of personal space, hands down all the time, very touchy, very sentimental. You know what's interesting to me about this is that, you know, it's sort of like taking a sampling, and we know that all of our kids are different, right? And some kids don't like to be touched, can't handle it, don't like to give hugs, and it's just not in their wheelhouse, right? It makes them feel uncomfortable, and it's not their thing. And yet there are a lot of kids on the autism spectrum who are completely the opposite and are over huggy, over kissy, over, you know, craving that sensory of people hugging and touching them constantly. And then there are a whole bunch of children who are somewhere in the middle. My child is and was one of those children who is overly touchy, overly, you know, seeking that sensation a lot, like, you know, I'm hearing you say this, very touchy, that you would have to remind him. I could always tell where my child was, you know, in terms of what kind of a day it was when he was little, because if he was having a really rough day sensory-wise, he would climb me like a tree and want to sit on my head like a headdress. Yeah. And it's very interesting because it rarely ever happens, but it wasn't too long ago, about a month ago, that my son all of a sudden was like crawling up my arm. I was sitting on the couch and he literally crawled up the couch and put his legs over my head without asking me and had his hands on my head. And I said, wow, what's going on for you today? And we switched a bunch of things and did a bunch of things differently. And I tried, you know, getting him a lot more exercise because, woo, I did not want to go back there. But my son was somebody, I remember taking him to preschool, and parents would come in every day of the week to volunteer, and they would come and sit down on the carpet with all of the kids, and usually their child would be circling around them and be so happy that, you know, mom or dad was there. And as soon as somebody sat down on the carpet, my son would make a beeline over, even if he'd never met them before, sit in their lap like, oh, thank goodness, where have you been? And turn around and give them hugs and kisses, total strangers. And while I loved that he, you know, was somebody who gave affection, it would scare me, you know where. I just all the way down the block and around the corner. But what we were taught over time with our individual child, and I'm not saying that it's the same with yours, but you know, you can ask some questions to see if there are some similarities. We were taught that it is this sensory thing that he is needing, and that we could give it to him in other ways, and that he could get it fed in other ways. And one of the things that we started last year, because he had always been in a classroom where there was a lot of hugging that was going on in kindergarten and in first grade, there was always a lot of hugging, and even in second grade. And as we were making the transition to third grade, it was like, okay, that really isn't going to work now or much longer. And so we had a whole regimen of teaching him how to hug himself in a way, an appropriate way, that people won't notice that he's doing it. You know, that, you know, doing these kinds of things to his hand. One of the things that he does a lot now that we're trying to scale back on is that he'll crack his knuckles. It's an appropriate way, but he does it a little too much because it gives him that sensory stimulation. But you see adults who sit there and they squeeze their own knee and they massage their own hands, and, you know, it's not unacceptable. But walking up to total strangers and throwing your arms around them and lifting your feet up off the floor, yes, that is socially unacceptable. So, there, you know, keep in mind that there are ways that if it's too much, we can work on it. We figure out what is the need that's being met and get it fed in other ways. Here's somebody who says, to the answer to the question, how does your child show love? They say, he tells me. that's a wonderful thing. And I know that there are many of you out there who have children that you're longing for that, to hear, I love you. And, you know, hang in. You know, it comes in lots of different ways. And you might be surprised at how pleasurable it will be when it comes, no matter how it comes. Another person who says that their child rubs, that he rubs my back, my shoulders, my side, my face, and he loves to snuggle and hug, saying, I love you. How sweet is that? Maybe a budding masseuse. We don't know. Another person who says my daughter hugs, and she gives the best hugs, butterfly kisses, stares into my eyes, and says, I love you in her own way. Absolutely love that. If we have time today, we're going to talk about eye contact. Another person who says my son is a very loving child. He will hug and kiss me. He isn't great with showing it to other people, but I'm okay with that. You know what? I'm with you. He shows me he loves me. That's wonderful. Another person who says squeezing my face and arms and sitting on me. We were just talking about that, right? LOL. I love my little face. Love that. Another person who says lots of hugs and saying, Dad, I love you so much. Best part of my day, and there's a smile face there. I'll bet. That's a wonderful thing. Another person who says my Aspie is a lover. He lives to climb in my lap and snuggle. He's almost 12, and he never hesitates to show love to us. Extended family is different. He usually squeezes their hands. Well, I think that's appropriate. I mean, if you stop and think about it, as we get older, we don't run up and give people hugs. We shake hands, which is squeezing hands. I love this. And she says it's more comfortable for him to give hand hugs. I think he's ahead of his time, is what I think. I think that's wonderful. Another person just says loves. Absolutely love that. Okay, here's one that's interesting. My son pokes me in the arm. He walks by me every morning. He walks by and he pokes me in the arm and he smiles. That's his way of saying, I love you, Mom. I just say to him, I love you too, and he grumbles at me. You know, that's communication though, and communication is so valuable because it comes in all different kinds of ways, and I love that that's the way you guys are communicating that. Another person who says hugs, kisses, and snuggles up in my lap about an hour ago. Love that. My son, he's getting so big, but this morning I said, just come and sit on my lap for a second so I can give you a hug, because I'm going to blink and you're not going to fit on my lap anymore. And truth told, he doesn't fit on my lap now. But we make it work. Another person who says, my daughter signs, I love you, and lots of smiles. She doesn't hug with the arms, but leans the head in for the top of the head kiss. We call it the flyby. Love her. Oh, I love you guys. That is absolutely wonderful. That's going to make me cry. Another person who says hugs, kisses, and keeping me on my feet. Smiles. Absolutely wonderful. I'm going to go to one of the other sites to see what else you guys have written in. But aren't these wonderful? Isn't it great to hear all these different ways? Because there isn't just one way of showing love. And it's so clear. I am not seeing it there. We have this new way of doing things on Facebook, and I can't always find something. And it's me. It's me. I fully admit it's me. But still, I can't find it. So let me go to one of the other sites here. Okay, here we are. Somebody who says, like a typical child, maybe a little more often and a little more enthusiastic. Well, that's okay, isn't it? Okay, another person who says, God bless the special educator. After a year of training, my now 9-year-old gives lots of hugs, kisses, SpongeBob teeth gums, and he states it often. I want to know what a SpongeBob teeth gum is, because my son is addicted to SpongeBob, and I don't know what that is. I'm a little intrigued. But I love it, because what I'm hearing in that was that before that wasn't happening, but it is now. How lovely is that? Okay, another person who says, one of mine can't say it verbally, but my other guy snuggles and seeks me out when something is scary, and that's love. It is love, you're right. Another person says, hugs and kisses. She says, big hug, and comes to you and gives you one. My son loves to give open mouth kisses. Still working on closing his mouth. At least there is no tongue, LOL. Yes, you know, and that happens from time to time, even with neurotypical kids, that they see people kissing and they slobber, and you're right, thank goodness that there's no tongue, but we, you know, we can teach them to close their mouth and if need be to keep their tongue in their mouth. But, you know, it's an expression of love. And another person who says, bear hugs, beautiful eyes, honest words, and tender kisses that are so innocent and pure. How sweet is that? Okay, you guys are killing me. This is so lovely. Well, I hope that over the weekend you guys can still continue to write in. I think when you give your answers to the question of the day, you put it out there to the universe and remind all of us how incredibly special our kids are and how much love there is. There might be things that we're working on. There might be things that we're seeing that are going to be different than other people, but it's still love. And you guys have just reminded us of that. That's absolutely spectacular. I did promise you a social tip of the week, and we're going to do that really quickly before we have Dr. Jonathan Tarbox come into the studio. The thing that I wanted to talk about today is eye contact, because there's so many different things that we can work on with social skills, and eye contact is one of the earliest things that we can work on. But the reason why I like to talk about it is because regardless of what our child's age is, regardless of what their ability is, it's something that we can continue to work on endlessly, right? Because we don't want to just get eye contact. We don't want to just get, you know, this staring blankly. We want naturalistic eye contact where the child finds it reinforcing to make eye contact with another person. There are lots of different potential reasons why a child is not making eye contact, and I think it changes from different. It has the potential to change from time to time with different kids. I see in my own son that there are times when, you know, and he makes pretty good eye contact anymore, although there are times that I still remind him in different circumstances. But sometimes his making eye contact, I know that it's when he's very emotionally charged, that if he's talking to me and saying something really deeply important, that he'll make a certain amount of eye contact, but that it's hard sometimes, that there's a sensory component of making eye contact with somebody and saying what you really think and what you really feel. I think we can all relate to that, right? It's a little bit harder. And so we're working to strengthen that within him. And then there are times when I don't think it has a contextual cause. I think that there are days when it's just plain harder for him to focus his eyes. Now that's my individual child, but whatever is going on with your child, what we always want to be concentrating on is making it reinforcing for our children to make eye contact. So when your child gives you their eyes, even if they're telling you something, oh, we're having power things here, even if they're telling you something that is not making you happy, to make sure that you reinforce eye contact, that you appreciate it always. I know that as our kids grow and as they do better with the eye contact, sometimes we take it for granted. I've certainly been guilty of that after we've worked so hard to get eye contact, there are days when I just don't even notice because it's so present. And then we'll have a day when things aren't as good, he's not as on, and I see that the eye contact goes and I go, wow, do I miss that? And do I need to be reinforcing it? We all need to remember the basic principle that any behavior that we want to see maintained over and over and over again, we have to make it reinforcing. And if when our child is making eye contact, that's the moment where we're saying to them, you know, you didn't do this right and you didn't do that, we run the potential of losing some of that ground. So be mindful today to reinforce eye contact, to whatever is reinforcing. If your child is a hugger, like we just talked about all these huggers, if that's, to give a hug for eye contact and say, good looking. That's so good, that eye contact. Let them know how much it means to you on a regular basis. And if you're just starting out working on eye contact, make sure that you're working on it in a way that's really reinforcing for the child. That I've told the story before about, Peter Farrig and the swords. You can watch that on a previous episode. But they made eye contact so reinforcing to my child before they ever even uttered words about eye contact. It was reinforcing to him so that he wanted to do it. So I encourage you to find something that's reinforcing to your child and use that as your reinforcer when you're working on eye contact. All right, we're going to take a short break, check out what's happening with the electrical system here in the studio, and we're going to be joined by Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. So stick with us.
When do you know that your child isn't just a picky eater? When do we know it's time to ask for help?
Absolutely, that's such a great question. And I think the important thing is to think about it in terms of when is it impacting the child's health, their growth, or their development. So clearly, if your child is not growing along his or her own growth curve, so as you recall as a parent, you go to the pediatrician and I say that's the parent star chart. Yeah. They show you how your child is growing, and if your child is growing the way he or she is supposed to, you get the Gold Star Parent Award. But if your child has been growing along a certain percentile, let's say the 25th percentile, and then he or she starts to what we call fall off the growth curve, meaning he may go, for example, from the 25th percentile to the 10th percentile. That's really a time you need to start thinking about professional services. And the key there is when you're trying to fall off the growth curve, it may be that it's not that your child is losing weight. I think that's what's deceptive. Children should always gain weight. They should always grow as predicted. So your child, for example, may be simply maintaining his weight, but at a time when he should be gaining weight. So that will be the first thing, looking at the child's growth chart and talking to your pediatrician about whether your child's growing as he or she should be. The second issue is your child's nutritional content sufficient? And in this case, you really need to have your pediatrician either look at your child's diet, you might have to keep some records, or you may need to go to a nutritionist who will analyze your child's diet and tell you, well, your child's not getting enough iron, or they're not getting enough of certain minerals. Again, that would be a time when you would want to go and get professional help. And then the last piece is if your child's intake is impacting his health in another way. So, for example, the child's cholesterol is elevated, or your child's having other kinds of problems that are a function of inadequate diet. Oftentimes, selective eaters are selecting diets that are high in fat or high in sugar. And it's interesting because it's not always the case that these children are underweight. As you indicated, they could, in fact, be overweight.
And it seems like when your child's diagnosed with autism, there's so many things to think about, and food is such an emotional issue to begin with. And so people say, well, he or she's got all these other things, so then I just want to give him the foods, but we can get to a happy child with a healthy diet, yes?
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. How do you pick and choose? What do I do next? We have so many issues. We have language. We have social skills. But you have to remember that your child's diet impacts his or her, not only their growth, but also their brain development. And so it really is important to intervene if your child is not eating an adequate diet, because malnutrition early on, and again, I'm not talking about kids who are, marasmic, they have the big bellies with the skinny legs. I'm talking about kids, again, who are just, for example, eating French fries. If you're not getting adequate nutrition later on, your child may be at risk for later developmental learning or behavior problems. And we have enough problems already. We don't want to add to them. Intervening early is, like everything, critical. I know it's very, very difficult, but if you get good professional help, The great thing about these kids is the vast majority of them respond beautifully to treatment. Because they're often selective, they're actually getting hungry, they're motivated to eat, and all we need to do is expose them to new foods, and they'll actually then learn to like a lot of the foods we introduce. So if you get in there with a good professional help, intervene early, you can make a huge difference. I have tons of kids we've seen with autism who are actually the best eaters in their family. And what we like to say is the only way you can tell if a child's been to our program is our kids eat their vegetables.
That's wonderful. And so if somebody's determined that it's time to get help, let's start with how can they get help from your organization?
They can go on our website at the unmc.edu. And we have a page for pediatric feeding disorders, and we actually have an application for the screening process. They can go online and fill that out, and someone will contact them to schedule an appointment. We actually can do some evaluations by telehealth. So for parents who are at a long distance, we have been able to evaluate them without them having to come to our program. And we actually do deliver some services via telehealth. Now, if the problem is very, very severe, we may have to have the child come to us, at least for some period of time, to make a little bit of a difference in the behavior, and then follow the family via telehealth. So, you know, technology has been a big boon to us and to the families because it does sort of bridge that distance, because a lot of there's not a widespread availability of the kinds of programs that are really helpful for these children.
Welcome back to Autism Live. I'm Shannon Penrod, and we are so thrilled to welcome back to the show Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. We haven't been, you know, I've been gone and you've been gone and been doing different things, so we haven't had you on the show for a while. If you're a new viewer, Dr. Tarbox is the Director of Autism Research Group. Is that the title?
Executive Director.
Autism
Research Group. Yep.
And you are also the head of Research and Development here at the Center for Autism and Related Disorders.
That's
both
correct.
Really incredible things to have on a resume.
Well, thank you.
But you've more than earned them because you're such a wealth of information. We've missed you, so grateful to have you back today and get a little bit of your time.
Good to be back.
Well, we've been talking about challenging behaviors all week long, and we've asked a bunch of questions and gotten a bunch of responses back from parents about what's most difficult, if they could change any behavior, and we've heard a lot of different things. But yesterday in particular, we asked all of you to write in about what's your hardest time of day, and does it happen to coincide, coincidentally, with challenging behavior from your child? And we had just a plethora of responses about different times of the day that are particularly hard. And I was wondering if we could talk a little bit with you about those kinds of things. One of them that resoundingly people said morning, and the morning ritual and getting out the door and getting to school just about sinks everybody's battleship.
That's for sure. My house too.
And in mine, and in mine. So what kinds of things do we know having to do with research are effective in helping the morning time rituals?
Sure. Well, there's not a ton of research that I know of that has specifically addressed morning rituals as opposed to other times. But I think one of the reasons why the morning can be so difficult is because, let's face it, all effective behavior management comes down to us as the adults managing the consequences and the antecedents of the child's behavior effectively. So in other words, if the kid is misbehaving, then we need to be able to not give them what they want then, right? And so that means we have to be able to have the freedom to kind of do what we need to do to not give the kid what they want, right, when they're misbehaving. Well, during times like morning transitions, we don't have the freedom to do anything. We have to do what we need to do to get out the door, so we're not late for work, so our kids aren't late for school. And you know, we've got a laundry list of things that need to be accomplished before we get out the door. And quite frankly, most of us probably sleep in a little bit later than we should have, you know, and so we're already pinched for time as it is. And so if your child starts acting out, we don't, you know, physically have the time to follow through in the proper way, you know. So what that ends up looking like is parents, and I include myself in this, taking all kinds of shortcuts because we need to get out the door.
Yeah.
So if your kid says, no, I don't want to do X, Y, and Z, like, okay, you know, let's brush your teeth, and instead of brushing his teeth for a minute like he should, maybe he does it for 5 seconds. And well, of course, the correct thing to do there would be to follow through. Well, no, you know, you got to brush your teeth for a minute. We don't want your teeth to rot out. And so to follow through with that and to make sure that your child actually does it. But if you're trying to make a lunch, trying to change your baby's diaper, trying to, you know, remember, you know, what you need to bring to work and all that other stuff at the same time, you don't have time to stand there and follow through. Make sure
and
that
your kid can't be late to school, and you
That's
can't
right.
be late to work, and your options diminish.
So it's no surprise then that what you see is parents end up kind of letting the kid get away with it. Or, you know, maybe maybe they don't let them get away with 5 seconds. Maybe they say, well, come on, just brush your teeth, and they do another 10 seconds, and then, okay, fine. But what you've done there is, instead of the whole minute or the whole 2 minutes like the child's supposed to do, you let them get away with, what, an 80% reduction in the work, right?
That sounds terrible.
Right? So basically what you're doing accidentally is reinforcing the misbehavior, you know, about 80%. So, you know, what can you do?
Well, that's a good question, and you know I'm going to ask it. What can you do? What can we do so that we're not doing that?
Well, this is going to sound stupid because I know that everyone's already thought of this, and everyone's going to say, well, I've already tried this.
But I always love it when you say the stuff that I call the duh stuff.
Yeah, well,
because
and
it
that's
makes sense.
a lot of what ABA comes down to is common sense stuff that none of us have the common sense to actually follow through with. You know? So here it is. No one's going to like it. Wake up earlier.
Okay.
Just get out of bed earlier. You know, if you know that there's going to be a 30-minute fight to get your kid dressed in the morning because it drives them nuts, or brushing teeth, or taking a bath, or whatever it's going to be. You got to wake up 30 minutes earlier and got to get going 30 minutes earlier so that you have the time to actually follow through in the way that you need to. And, you know, I don't mean to make this sound negative. It's not all just about following through and forcing a kid through misbehavior. It's also about reinforcing good behavior, too.
Absolutely.
So if, you know, you've identified a particular reinforcer or a particular motivator or reward that you want your kid to work for and you know it's really powerful, man, you better make sure your kid has the opportunity to get that when they perform really well, right? So if your kid snaps out of bed, brushes their teeth, does everything just like they're supposed to, eats dinner or eats breakfast with no fuss, and you go, great, perfect, I want to reward that, right? Well, if you have to run out the door, too late. So if you get up 10 minutes earlier, then okay, then you can have X, Y, and Z for 10 minutes before school. So again, just having the time to manage the consequences and to provide extra help if you need to is gonna, you know, is gonna go a long ways. But I know it's kind of a no duh, like wake up earlier, no kidding. You know?
Well, and when we can, but no, I appreciate it because it does put it in a certain light and goes, well, you know, okay. But now, of course, I have questions because I'm thinking through some of the things that I do in the morning and going, oh, where are you on the question of choosing your battles in the morning? Is that a good thing or a bad thing, or it depends on the thing?
Right, and you know, the whole issue of choosing your battles is really interesting because it's one that's, I think, really misunderstood, but really, really important. And so people oftentimes think of choosing your battles as meaning sort of giving up or sort of not prioritizing something. To me, that's not at all what it means. What it means is, there's two different ways to choose your battles. There's a good way and a bad way.
Let's see if I'm doing it the good way or the bad way.
Here's the good way. If your child, if you know that a particular circumstance is going to be problematic for your child, and you know that you don't have the time to deal with it appropriately in a particular context or at a particular time, don't let that circumstance happen. Okay. So, for example, if you know, if you ask your child to eat a non-preferred food, let's say, for breakfast, and you know that's going to be problematic because they're really picky eaters, don't ask them to eat a non-preferred food for breakfast. Target non-preferred foods when you have time to actually follow through. So lunchtime, dinner time. I'm not saying give up on picky eating, by no means. Target it twice as much, but do it during other times.
At an appropriate time.
Whereas, here's the wrong way to pick your battles. You give your child non-preferred food for breakfast. Maybe you even realize, oops, that was stupid, but you've done it now. You said, here you go, you got to eat it. It's good for you, and your kid says no and throws the food. Now, at this point, what are you going to do? It's too late to pick your battles. You can't pick your battles now, because picking your battles now just means reinforcing the misbehavior, and of course your kid's going to do it again tomorrow. So once the behavior has happened, and once the circumstance is such as it is, you got to follow through. You got to, manage the consequences in a meaningful way. Good consequences for good behavior, and no good consequences for misbehavior, right? And I don't mean bad consequences. I just mean you're not giving your kid what he wants if he's misbehaving. And so, And that's kind of just common sense, I know.
Yeah.
But it really is an issue of prevent the issue from occurring to begin with. That's a good way to pick your battles.
Okay.
Don't give up once the misbehaviors happen. That's the bad way to pick your battles. Does that make sense?
It does make sense. My question about, because this has actually come up in our family, because my mother was asking and saying, are you sure you're doing this right? And I'm like, no, I'm 100% sure we're doing this right. Now I'm not sure
Let's
if we're
go
doing
over
this
some
right.
more examples then.
Okay, because my son is completely capable of dressing himself. He totally can do that. And we've been working on fluency to do it a little bit faster on the weekends.
Great, perfect.
We don't work on that on school mornings.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. It's a perfect example. And so in case your audience doesn't completely get why that matters so much, it's because if you're working on it and your child might even become frustrated and start to have some misbehavior or cry or whatever it is, if you're doing that in the morning when you're working on the morning routine and getting dressed, you don't have time to follow through. And even if he does really well, you don't have time to reward it. You got to just get to school, right?
Right.
So,
so let's see if I'm implementing it in the right way, though. Because on the weekends, we do a whole thing where I do a counting system and I say to him, how quick can you get dressed? If you can get dressed, by the time I count to 20 and meet me down at the door with your shoes on and your teeth brushed and everything, whatever, I set the number, so that we're doing that on the weekend. But during weekdays, when I know that there's a whole bunch of other things and he moves slow in the morning, what I do is I say to him, and we discussed this a long time ago, this has been in place for a long time, is that I'll put something on that's educational for him to watch, and I literally say, let me dress you like a doll. And he doesn't have to do it at all. Now, my mother thinks this is horrible.
Right.
But there are other things that I want him to do quickly in the morning. I want him to eat faster than he does, because I know that has to happen and I can't do it for him.
Can't do it for him, yeah.
But I'm dressing him from head to toe, and while he watches the program.
So
not the best thing.
Well, okay, so you're sort of avoiding the issue a little bit by not having him get dressed. However, if you are working on it during on the weekends, and if you're making progress on it on the weekends, and if you have a plan for how to transition that progress down to weekday mornings.
That's where I don't have.
Okay,
that's
so
what
that's
I need
the
to work
important
on.
part, right.
Okay, and I can do that. But no, I just go. I say to myself, let's get everything else. This is something I actually can do for him. He can do it perfectly fine. If he couldn't on the weekends, I would be worried about it.
Right.
But maybe I need to get him up a little bit earlier so that he can do it. And maybe I need to kind of find the reinforcer and say to him the same kind of thing I do on the weekend, and say, hey, today I'm going to have you do it, and give him a little bit more time than I do on the weekend.
Yeah, a little bit more time. And if you're able to beat the clock, then you get X, Y, and Z. And make sure it's something that he can have right then, or that maybe it's appropriate for him to have during the car ride to school. Maybe it's a favorite book or workbook or cell phone video game, whatever it is.
We always let him watch TV in the morning, but it always has to be educational. And every once in a while, he wants to work to watch something that isn't educational in nature. Same amount. So I could do that and say, if you can get dressed in 35 seconds, then you can watch SpongeBob as opposed to the Discovery Channel.
And one way that might be nice too, especially with morning routines, is to help the child sort of take some responsibility for their own behavior. And so you could do things like a kind of timer that he can operate. So they make timers that are made for children, like visual timers, or a stopwatch with big buttons that's pretty easy to learn how to use.
So it's not me counting.
So it's not necessarily you counting. Yeah, as long as he's not going to cheat,
Right. Well, I cheat sometimes. If I see he's struggling with something, I'll slow down a little bit because I want him to get to the reinforcement.
You want him to be successful.
I help him cheat. It's a terrible thing, I admit it. Okay, but mostly we need to plan ahead, is what I'm hearing. We got to get up a little bit earlier, we got to plan ahead, and be mindful.
And this is one of those situations where people sort of think like, I'm doing everything I can. And well, that's true. We all are doing everything we can, but kind of not. I mean, our behavior can change. It doesn't feel like we can wake up any earlier, but if we had to, like let's say, we had to wake up an hour earlier to take care of our mother who had cancer or something like that, we'd be up.
Or get to our own chemo appointment.
Right, exactly.
We would make it happen.
No problem. We'd make it happen.
Okay, so it's prioritizing.
It's prioritizing, and it's kind of just taking a lot of the thinking out of it and saying, well, I could worry about this or think about this or complain about it, or here's the behavior that I know I need to do. Maybe I'll just try it. Maybe I'll just do it for a week, see what happens. And a lot of times what folks find is if they just say, well, I guess I'm just going to do it for a week, it becomes routine, and it's not that much harder to wake up 20 minutes earlier.
And you know what I've found through working with you guys is that every time you ask me to do something that I said I don't have time for that, if I took the time for it, I ended up having more time because the behavior became better and I had more time to deal with things.
That's right.
I kind of, from from time to time have been angry at you guys. I'm like, no, I seriously don't have time. You don't understand. I'm an autism parent. I don't have time for this.
Right.
And then I end up having more time for it.
Well,
you guys are always right.
What's that saying about an ounce of prevention is worth whatever?
A pound of cure.
A pound of cure, yeah. And it's the same thing. It's like dealing with this challenge now and putting in a little bit of extra effort now is going to save me frustration for years to come. So even though it doesn't feel good in the moment, it doesn't feel like you can do it,
right.
It works.
It actually makes it easier. Okay, we're going to take a short break, and then we're going to come back and take on the transition time, coming home from school. We heard from people, coming home from school, from that time to dinner time ends up being a really difficult time. So we're going to ask Dr. Tarbox to talk to us about what things we can do about that period of the day.
Sounds good.
So stick with us.
Behavior guy.
And why are you known as the behavior guy?
I sort of adopted that moniker after working with parents and teachers who always refer to me that, well, the behavior guy's coming into the classroom, behavior guy's coming to the house today, so might as well own it. But I'm a board-certified behavior analyst. Facebook page is facebook.com, and I think it's /behaviorguy2, and then but the website is behaviorguy.com, and it's sort of an information portal for people interested in applied behavior analysis, parents, teachers, students, whoever.
You have worked for a period of time with kids who have behavior problems that don't necessarily have autism, correct?
That's correct. I actually got my start in special education with typically developed children, many of whom had diagnoses like oppositional defiant, conduct disorder, ADHD. So indeed, applied behavior analysis is just a science of human behavior. It happens to be the science of human behavior that informs effective autism treatment, but that is one small tail of the spectrum for which behavioral principles apply.
So a lot of our parents don't know how effective it is for kids who aren't on the spectrum. When you would use this for kids in the classroom, they're having those behavior problems. How effective was it?
Very effective. It really depends on implementation, and that's the hardest thing, is getting everybody on board and following through, and that's a tough challenge for a practitioner, is to get teaching the skills to the parents and teachers. That was something I always focused on. So, you know, my role has always been not to directly provide services to the child, but to teach parents how to implement these procedures on a daily basis, because they're with their children 24 hours a day, to give teachers the tools that they need to understand how to assess behavior, how to implement effective teaching skills, effective classroom management skills, so that they're always effective. So it's parent training and teacher training, and giving everybody new skills all around, you know.
And now you're doing a lot of training of behaviorists, yes?
I do. Actually, I work for the Florida Institute of Technology. We have an online professional development program for individuals who may have degrees in other related fields and want to get that core course content for board certification. So I am a lead co-instructor for that program, and work with the students in helping them understand the concepts and working with them to gain the skills that they need for board certification.
Welcome back. It's Friday here at Autism Live, and our special guest is the fabulous Dr. Jonathan Tarbox. I so enjoy the time we get to spend with you. And he is here today talking with us about challenging behavior. We asked all of you questions about what time of day was hardest for them, and if it happened to coincide with when our children had their challenging behavior, because a lot of times it does.
No surprise, yes.
Yes. You know, it was one of those things where you guys went, yeah. And a lot of you wrote in and said that the transition time between when you pick your child up from school to dinner time is really difficult, because you're tired, you're pooped, you're on one schedule, and they've come home from school with a different agenda, and then it's a difficult transition time. And so I was wondering if you had any information about that. We just took on the morning time. Now help us with the afternoon time. What's our duh moment in the afternoon?
Well, somewhat similar, but the nice thing about the afternoon transition time is at least you have a little bit more time to work with, right? So you can follow through with requests that you make. You can follow through with rewards, you know, reinforcers when your child does, you know, give it the best shot. But the main thing I think for a lot of folks on the spectrum is having sort of predictability and having some kind of structure. And actually that's not just for the kids, it's for us too, because it kind of helps us remember what's important and what to do and what to follow through with. But if your child has a predictable routine, so I get home from school, have a snack maybe, then it's time for homework, then when homework's done, then I go outside and play, or I get, TV or video games or whatever it is in your home. I think that can go a really long way. Not to say that we all, we don't want to teach our kids to be rigid, like they always have to have the same routine. We certainly don't want to encourage that. But for a lot of kids, predictability and structure is helpful.
Yeah.
And it's helpful for us to just keep us on track of what we need to get done and when, more or less, So,
absolutely.
I mean, that would be the first thing, is just have a predictable structure. Try to get home more or less at the same time, and go through more or less the same routine of homework and everything else, and have I think clear expectations too. So sort of almost like classroom rules, but house rules. So you're expected to do your homework, try hard with a good attitude. Try hard by yourself first. If you need help, ask for help, etc. And of course, this will all have to be adjusted depending on the language abilities of your child and all that. But yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And since you brought up the word structure, one of the things that I hear from parents a lot is that they'll say, "Well, my child does, it's one or the other. My child does really well at school, but then they come home and they fall apart," or that my child does really well at home and then they go to school and they fall apart. And one of the things that I hear discussed a lot is, what's the structure in those two different things? Because if they're in a really highly structured environment at school, we often hear the parent saying, that's when they do really well, and they've had so much structure at school that they come home and I feel like I should give them some free time. Every child deserves to have some free time.
And that's of course true.
But we can structure the free time.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, having some free time and giving your child a break because they work so hard at school doesn't mean just the run of the house all evening. It means, a reasonable amount of free time.
Right.
And quite frankly, a short break right when your child gets home from school is totally appropriate.
Right.
A snack is certainly appropriate if they're hungry. Right. But, homework is the order of the day. You got to do it. And, treating a child just because they have autism any differently than you would a typically developing child with regards to homework doesn't make any sense. If you got homework, you got to do it. You know? So get that done first. It doesn't make a lot of sense to give big treats or huge breaks or lots of fun before homework, right? And we know why, because we want to motivate the child to work hard and get the homework done and not dilly-dally.
But I love the idea of giving a little break. That was something that I had shared recently, that my son has been appropriately asking for the break before homework, and I was really reticent because I thought we're never going to get down to it, but actually he got down to it much quicker because there was a little break. But we just started 4th grade, and can I just tell you how much more homework? I'm shocked.
Great. My son starts, he just started too. Yeah, it's a little bit of a change.
It's like the amount of homework with 4th grade. And I have a friend who, her son was in 6th grade last year, and she said, "Oh, Shannon, just get ready. The sea that's coming, the storm that's coming, the tsunami." And I can't even believe how much more homework it is.
Wow.
Yes, I have a little pause for how much more homework it is. But what's interesting is that we're about a week in, and the first day I felt like, oh man, maybe I should be asking for little, and I said, no, let's just see. Let's just see how it goes. And last night we had the most pleasurable homework experience I think we've ever had.
That's great.
I'm hoping, I'm hanging my fingernails, hoping that that's how it's going to be. And I reinforced a lot and said how awesome it was because it was so great, and because I'd like to see more of that.
Right, absolutely. And so was he able to actually have some fun during homework?
Yeah, we did. We had fun together, and one of the assignments was really, really fun too. We have a great teacher. I don't know how I got so lucky this year, but the assignment that was all week long, we had things happening all week long, but the big assignment that they had to plan for, because he's a planner this year, which I just love, and he has to check off that he did the assignment, so all week long he had to do a little bit of work on, it's called a paper bag story assignment, and all the kids got the same big paper bag, and they had to put 5 items in it and write a sentence about what the item has to do with themselves to present to the class today.
Wow, very cool.
And he at first did not want to do it, but had a great deal of fun with it because there are Legos in the bag, and there's a robot remote control in the bag, and and a spaceship in the bag, so it's everything that he finds
very cool that he likes.
Yeah. So I digress. I always make it about me and my kid. How do I make that happen? In any case.
One more thing I want to say about homework, though, is, people oftentimes get this false impression of ABA that it's just all about, like, being a drill sergeant and making kids do stuff and all that. But that's, of course, as we know, completely wrong. And ABA is all about positive reinforcement. And so, probably the best thing you can do for your kids' homework is to try to make it fun and to try to remove nagging from the equation. So if you find yourself nagging your kid, then okay, that's
guilty as charged.
Right. Well, and again, me too. We all are, right?
All right.
But that's a cue for us as parents to say, oh, okay, hang on now. I need to take a step back. I need to. There's a few things I can do to make this situation more fun for my kid, and decrease my nagging, and therefore make it more fun for me too.
Yeah.
So a couple things. One is how difficult is the homework, right? So if the problems or the tasks that your child is trying to solve, if it's overly challenging and they genuinely need help, then I would get in there sooner rather than later to help them, to provide the help that they need so that they can be successful quickly and easily. If that's not the problem, if it's just kind of a problem of motivation, like for example, it's honestly boring work, then you're going to need to use more positive reinforcement. Maybe, that could be in the form of just praise and just, being there with your child to help them, or not help them necessarily, but to do it with them and to give them attention while they do it. Or it could be in the form of more contrived reinforcers, like a little bit extra TV time or, whatever it is. Do this first, then you get to go outside and ride your bike or, whatever it is. But it's important to make it, to build sort of reinforcement and fun around the whole sort of homework interaction. It's not a task where you're the taskmaster and the kid has to do it. I mean, that is the truth actually, but you don't, that's the goal is to not make it feel like that. The goal is to make it genuinely fun, not sort of fakey fake, like, oh, great job, but like actually fun, like actually try to have some fun.
Well, you know what? What just clicked for me, because when you said a lot of people think that ABA is this, drill sergeant kind of thing, and I was thinking, no, I try to think of it more as a clown car. What can I pull out of the clown car?
Great,
But I'm not applying that to the homework, and you just made me realize that. But I'm not applying the clown car.
Nobody is enough. That's why we have discussions like this to try to give us all a reminder. Like,
but last night was fun, and it was fun for me, and it was fun for him.
There you go.
So I need to apply the clown car to the homework. That's something for me to think on.
And it's amazing. As a parent, it's so easy to nag. It's so natural to nag, and it's so natural to become frustrated. Especially if your kid is misbehaving. But that doesn't help the situation. What helps is managing the consequences in a neutral but effective way. So, getting mad doesn't help. Giving a consequence that's meaningful helps. So if your kid just did something great, give them a great consequence that's meaningful. If they're misbehaving, getting mad doesn't help. Just follow through with whatever the routine is. Whatever it needs to be, that's what it needs to be. Sorry you're mad, you still have to do your homework.
Right.
It's not a big deal. Let's just continue.
Right.
And so I think that, and frankly, it just makes it nicer for the parent.
Absolutely.
To sort of kind of try to remove some of the naggy, emotional, sort of anger, frustration type business. None of that you're experiencing as a parent is helpful to you or to the kid.
Right.
So,
it doesn't get
easier said than done.
But, yes. I mean, and I talk a lot here about that, that's my go-to. I think, it is in my DNA to nag. It's my birthright. That's what it is. I digress. But anyway, okay, so we're moving through our day and talking about the different transition times. The next one, of course, was dinner time. The people were saying that dinner, and I know for those of us with kids on the autism spectrum, sometimes it's that there are different meals and there's different preferences, and there's children who won't eat these colors or won't eat these textures. And it's a hard time for the parents because you're trying to, everybody's thinking about money these days. You've spent money on the food, then you had to prepare it, which probably, unless you're a chef, was the last thing you wanted to do when you came home from work. And then you put it in front of the child, and there's the fear of, are they going to eat? Did we waste the money? Is my child okay? It's an emotional time.
It is, and we have all of these preconceived notions of what a family dinner is supposed to look like.
Oh, it is supposed to be a Norman Rockwell where you showed up with the turkey and everybody's happy and you look wonderful.
It doesn't include the kid not appreciating, not wanting to eat it, being a punk. It doesn't include you being frustrated, mad, tired, sad, depressed.
Or how much money was spent on the food, or the phone ringing and the phone beeping and
So my first recommendation with all of that is is kind of like a how's that working out for you type thing, with okay, you feel frustrated. This is not what you wanted, this is different from how you thought dinner was supposed to be in your family.
Yeah.
Okay, how's that working out for you? Feeling that frustration and feeling the frustration, you can't avoid that. But harping on it and obsessing on it and thinking about it and trying to make reality into something that it isn't, none of that's helpful,
So acknowledge the disappointment.
It is what it is.
And then look at what you can do.
Right, exactly.
What's within your control.
Exactly. And it turns out there's a lot that you can do if you're willing to let go of, trying to force it to be the way that it should be, or forget should or
so
would.
So if we let go
else.
of that,
let
go of the expectation. I have a friend who says that expectation is planned resentment. I love that.
That's great. I've never heard that.
So you let go of that. And then what is within our control? What can we do?
Well, and it does kind of go back to ABA common sense type stuff, but you want to set your kid up for success. So whatever the goal is, so here's something that you might think. My kid should eat their dinner because I worked really hard on it and because it's healthy, and they should know that I told them they have to eat it, so they should just do it, right? Forget the should. The fact is, if your kid's a picky eater and they're not eating it, they're not eating it. So it doesn't matter if they should, it doesn't matter if they should appreciate you or anything else, they're not.
Okay.
So if that matters to you to make a difference in that and to make some progress, then what you can do is pick a small achievable goal. So let's say today my kid's not eating any vegetables at all. One small achievable goal might be, tonight my kid will eat 1/4 of one bite of broccoli.
All right.
Okay. And how do we get the kid to do that? Well, we know, make the expectations clear, set some rules and make a clear, meaningful consequence based on that. Okay. So if you eat 1/4 of one bite of broccoli, then you get X, Y, and Z, whatever the X,
And I
Y,
want to
and Z
go back and point out what you just said, that the clear consequences are a reward, not a punishment.
Sorry, right. Everyone thinks consequence has a negative
I think that you always think in terms of that, but we always think...
Well, yeah, the culture, the consequence means bad, yeah. Right, so what I meant, let me be clear, what I meant was reinforcement. And so, the easiest one to do is something your grandmother probably would have done, which is you're not getting dessert unless you eat your vegetables.
Right.
But again, if you start with the whole plate of vegetables, that's going to be a huge fight. It might still work, but it's going to be a huge fight, and it's putting a big expectation, a huge behavior change. Better to start with 1/4 of one bite. You eat 1/4 of one bite of broccoli, and you get dessert. As long as you're not, having a tantrum and everything else.
Right. And what I love about that, too, is because if you say eat the whole plate in order to get the dessert, like you said, you might get it that day, but you'll be starting at square zero the next day. It's not like they're going to be more likely to eat the broccoli the next day.
And it's possible that your kid could wait you out for 3 hours first, and then finally eat the whole plate.
And then you're a Joan Crawford movie.
Yeah.
That's what you are. And who wants to do that, right?
Yeah. So, pick a baby step, a small achievable goal that will make you feel good and like you've accomplished something.
Okay.
And start with that. If it works, great. Do the same thing again the next day. Don't even try to bite off anymore.
Okay.
No pun intended.
Yeah. But a good one, I might add.
And then, the following day after that, if it still works, now it's maybe half a bite of vegetables. Great. If that's working, the next day a bite, etc. Baby steps.
And also when we're reinforcing in that time, we're just reinforcing and not adding in that little nag thing, but, see, it wasn't that bad. It's not that, the broccoli is...
It's not going to help,
So just reinforcing that they ate that little bit.
If you want to model, like, positive verbal behavior and positive thinking and talking about the behavior that matters, that's fine, but not naggy. You're right. So you might say something like, I love my vegetables. I love broccoli. It makes me strong. It gives me big muscles.
There you go.
And don't make your kid say it. You can just model it, And it's amazing as adults how much complaining we do in the course of our day-to-day lives that we don't even notice. And of course, cutting some of that out can be helpful too. So
we're getting questions. It's not that I'm not listening to you. It's just that Emily told me that we have, and I hadn't scrolled down. I'd be interested in hearing everyone's usual reinforcer and if there's a commonality with male versus male in ages. For example, my child will do anything for me if I let him have 15 minutes of free time on the laptop. I do set a timer. I've taught him, so much with that reinforcer. I don't know what I'd do without that laptop reward. And I think that that's an awesome thing. It isn't going to be what's great for everybody, but what an awesome thing to be able to have that, because when you have a reinforcer that works,
that's amazing.
It's a powerful thing.
And that's a great comment. And of course it is going to be different for every child, and it may well be different for male versus female children, but the gender doesn't really matter as long as it's something that really motivates your child and something that's easy for you to give and remove and something easy for you to limit access to, so that the kid isn't just having it constantly all the time. But laptop, iPads are a huge thing now. There's video games that you can get your kids that are at least a little bit educational, you know what I mean, but they're still fun.
Absolutely. And she goes on to say that her the child, I don't want to assume it's a her that's saying it, but the child is 10 years old, third grader in mainstream with an aid. And, you know, I've got a child that's, you know, in that same age range too, who's very interested in computer stuff too. But he's also very interested in video games. And so I do try to vary it up and sort of take a preference assessment with him on a given day about, you know, do you want computer time or do you want to be on your DS? Or do you want to be on the game system? Or we even have a token economy that he goes to school with, that every morning he gets to pick the thing that he's working for, and one of them is video games, but one of them is a play date, one of them is swimming, one of them is points towards something else. You know, so we try to vary it up because that's how he is. If the computer thing works and the 15-minute works continuously, I imagine that there's different things on the computer, so that can be a variation. We just don't want to have the same reinforcer over and over. So encouraging different games on the computer, because you don't want to burn something out.
Absolutely. And also you don't want to encourage your kid to be too obsessed with one particular topic. So if there is a way to sort of find variations on a particular theme. So if, you know, if your kid likes geography, well, there's a lot of different ways to interact with geography. Maybe video games related to it, books related to it, maps, atlases, you know, stories that are, you know, historical fiction that take place in different countries. So the idea is, you know, do try to include as much variety in reinforcers and rewards as possible. But sticking with a theme, we actually did some research in our Phoenix office showing that including novel or new items that the kid had no contact with at all, but were a variation on the same theme that we know the kid liked, actually worked better than the thing that we thought the kid normally liked, right? So we have, so in this case, kind of like the laptop, we had something that we know worked all the time, constantly. It was a huge reinforcer, really effective, but bringing in something new related to the same theme. So like, for example, a Thomas book as opposed to a Thomas puzzle or something like that actually worked better for a lot of kids. So very
interesting.
important.
So an iPad or something like that in place of the computer, or just different games.
Or different games on the computer.
Or different programs, or searching on the internet, or something along those lines. Really, really interesting. But our kids are all different.
Everyone's different.
The things that they, and we're different too. I mean, the things that we like, absolutely
and people's preferences change over time, and that's the same thing with you or I, or with the child on the spectrum.
Right. We get bored with stuff after a while. So really, really interesting. But I love it when somebody has found something that works, because man, that's when you know you can cover ground.
That's right.
When you know you've got something that is the be-all, end-all for them. It's like, how far can I run with this? So I love that. And I love that you got the timer. That's a wonderful, wonderful thing. Okay, and so we talked a lot yesterday with Angela Persicki about bedtime, and we talked about a bedtime pass with that. So I don't necessarily want to talk about that. But what I'm hearing a lot from parents too in terms of challenging behavior, I have to be honest about this, is disheartening to me that a lot of people are still not understanding what an FBA is.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
And that it's, you know, this sort of hazy thing that people are going, I just don't understand, and why is this important to me? Why should I know what this is? So could you give us a really quick rundown before we have to release you to what an FBA is? I know, I've given you like, you know, 2 minutes, the 2-minute explanation of what an FBA is and why it's something really important to a parent.
Okay, sure. So, you know, historically, in our culture, and probably every culture, when someone misbehaves, we've got a whole litany of reasons, a whole litany of explanations, right? A whole bunch of stories, basically, that people have made up that supposedly explain why the kid does it. And so the default
explanation, or why the adult, or why anybody does it.
Yeah. And unfortunately, the default explanations for most people are to blame the child or to blame the parent. So, oh, he does that because he has autism, or he does that because he has intellectual disability, or because he has ADHD, or whatever it is. Turns out,
or the parents aren't being strict enough.
Right. Yeah. Or the parent. Yeah. Or the mom's, you know, too busy at work to spend time with the kids, or you name it. Some, you know, there's a million and one crazy explanations. The fact of the matter is, there's been a lot of good quality scientific research on challenging behavior by kids on the autism spectrum and adults, and you know, probably 95% of the research has shown it actually comes down to some very basic explanations. Almost all challenging behaviors occur either to get attention, to get escape out of something the kid doesn't want to do, to get access to something the kid wants to have, usually a preferred item or activity or toy or food. Or there's a little bit of research to show some problem behavior occurs because the kid wants to be in control of the situation, sort of the bossy function of behavior. And sometimes it's in order for the child to get access to whatever obsession or routine or ritual they want. So a kid might have a tantrum if you don't let him line things up in the way that he wants to. But it's a short list of reasons, and none of these reasons have anything to do with the diagnosis, and none of these reasons have anything to do with IQ or the brain or anything else. It's stuff that's happening in the environment that encourages the behavior to continue to occur. And so, again, for 95% of folks on the spectrum, the reason why they're engaging in challenging behaviors is because it gets them something they want. And so in ABA terminology, that's called the function of the behavior.
Right.
The function is what you're getting, what you want that you're getting by using the behavior.
And in Dr. Phil, he refers to it as the paycheck.
There you go.
What's the paycheck for what you're doing?
There you go.
And people say, I have no paycheck for it, and he goes, I don't believe you.
There's always something.
There's always something. There's a reason you're getting something for it.
Right, exactly. Okay. And so you can come up with 1,000,001 explanations if you want to, but at the end of the day, research is clear. There's a very few a short list of explanations that 95% of the time, that's it. It's one of those reasons. Now, what an FBA is a procedure that's designed to figure out which of those reasons is causing your child's challenging behavior. And sometimes it's not just one of those. It could be 2 or 3 of those, 4 or 5 different reasons. So the FBA is a procedure that's implemented by professionals who are hopefully experts trained in conducting functional behavioral assessments. And it's a process that can take several hours up to several days or a week or 2. And basically it tells you, okay, here's the reason why your kid is having tantrums. He's trying to escape from work, or he's trying to escape from academic tasks, or here's the reason why your child is making inappropriate jokes in class. It's to get attention from peers.
Right.
But it's critical, because if you don't identify the real reason in the environment, meaning something that you or I have control over, or that the teacher has control over, if we don't identify what's happening in the environment that's encouraging that behavior to continue, then we can't change those things that are happening in the environment to stop that behavior from continuing.
Right.
It really is pretty much common sense. It's what reward is the kid getting out of the environment for doing the behavior. And it's 9 times out of 10, or probably 99 times out of 100, it's not something that people are aware of. If they were aware of it, they'd stop doing it.
Right.
It's not like someone saying, "Oh, good job hitting yourself," or "Good job hitting your peer." Right? It's not like that.
Right.
It's just inadvertent attention, or it's inadvertent letting the kid have a short break from something they don't want to do. Right. So yeah, it's absolutely critical.
And I think that the component of it that we're all missing, because it's not being implemented enough in our lives, is that if we had the FBA, then we could create a behavior intervention plan that's effective, and we could change the behavior.
Absolutely.
That's the progression of how that happens. And so for the thing that I want you guys to know at home, as we've been talking all week long about challenging behavior, whatever it is that you're dealing with, it can be changed.
Absolutely.
But that's the progression. You get the FBA, then you have the intervention plan, and you have to follow through it.
Right.
But I think so often what happens is that people see the behavior and they skip the part where they diagnose what's the function and go, well, here's what the intervention I'm going to put.
Let's just try this intervention.
Yeah, let's just try this. Well, this is what my mom did, or this is what my grandmother did, or my sister Becky did, whatever, did, and then it doesn't work and leads to more frustration, and maybe the behavior gets worse.
Right.
And people say, well, it's just the autism.
Right, exactly.
We need to make peace with this. This is my life. I'm not going to be able to change this.
Yeah, and a lot of these not helpful explanations come from a good place. Like, for example, just empathy is one. So, for example, if your kid's really frustrated because he doesn't know how to communicate, that makes you feel bad, right?
Yes.
Obviously, it should. If it doesn't, there'd be an issue,
Right.
And it's going to make your kid's teacher feel bad too, right? And so, of course, you say, well, he's so frustrated, we can't blame him for being upset and all that stuff. All of that stuff is true, but that still doesn't make the behavior go away. And it still doesn't help your child learn something better that will replace the behavior that he or she can be more successful and actually get what they want, and by being more successful. So, it really comes down to a whole bunch of, kind of myths that we have and expectations. And, it should be this or it should be that, or I think it's this, forget all that.
Yeah.
There's decades of research that say, here's the progression. You want to fix the behavior, here's the formula. It works 99 times out of 100.
Right.
You don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to do anything really fancy or really smart. You don't have to come up with any new theories.
Right.
Just follow this progression. People in ABA have been doing it for decades. It's pretty straightforward.
But it feels a little bit like the Matrix, because there are people who get that, and then there's everybody else, and sometimes once it's been explained to you and you go, okay, but you go back to your regular life where people aren't implementing, and it's very frustrating. You know, a teacher sends home a note and says, you know, Rebecca is biting people, and there's this feeling of, well, the parent is supposed to do something about that, right?
Yeah,
that, oh, well, okay, we'll do something, we'll get right on that. Or you're going to lose your placement in school, when what really needs to happen is that an FBA needs to be done. And unfortunately, in the United States, what that means is the parent has to ask for the FBA. We don't see the teachers asking for them. We don't see the administrators coming in and saying, well, sending home the note to the parent saying, your child is biting, so we're going to refer you to this person who's going to be doing an FBA in the classroom. It doesn't work that way.
Well, that's funny because there's nothing in federal law that says the parents are the ones that should be initiating the process.
Exactly.
You have a right to, but it's not like it shouldn't be your responsibility.
But I don't think there are enough people in the schools that understand this progression of, let's do the FBA, there'll be a BIP, and then
it'll work.
And then it will work, and the behavior will change, and everybody will be happy, happy, happy. So this is one of the reasons why I wanted Dr. Tarbox to explain it to you guys in a way that you would get, because it is your right as a parent.
That's right.
And if you are a teacher in the classroom, and I've talked to a lot of teachers lately who did not know that they could ask. They didn't even know they could.
Yeah, and
you can ask for an FBA to be done on a child.
You know, let's face it, what's more frustrating for you as a teacher than challenging behavior that disrupts the whole class,
oh
right?
my goodness. And the teachers want the change, but they do not know that that is the language. You can ask for an FBA. And the FBA to be done on the child, and that you be given a behavior intervention plan so that you can change the behavior.
That's right.
So that's why we all need to get to know this term and understand what it is and make friends with it, because it's the difference between us having true success with challenging behaviors or just being frustrated.
That's right. And you know, I have to say, because I do a lot of consulting work in schools, and and you know, it's very commonplace for me to go and visit a kid, observe a kid in a classroom, and it's been years that the kid has been doing the same exact behavior.
Yes.
And if you look back in his record, either there's no FBAs, or they were done very poorly by people who had no training, you know, who were just following some manual or something, but had no real training at all. And you know, the kid, you find, oh, okay, it's real clear. This is for escape. All we have to do is teach the kid to ask for a break, teach the kid to ask for help, and then give him positive reinforcement when he does the work. That works. And don't give him escape. Yeah.
And how quickly does it work?
Yeah, quickly. I mean, you see a difference in 1 week. If you really nail the function and you're doing the BIP with good integrity, you see a difference in 1 week. You know? And so it's like, wow, okay, this kid had challenging behavior for the last couple of years. Think about how much that impacted his learning, not to mention the learning of the other kids in his class.
Absolutely.
And all we needed was an effective behavior intervention plan.
And it's not just at school, because it's at home as well. So if you're seeing challenging behavior in your home, you have the ability to ask for an FBA as well. Whether you already have, you've already started ABA, you've got your provider in your home, and you can say, hey, this is this behavior. Make sure you're talking to your supervisors.
Absolutely.
If you don't already have ABA in your home, you can contact a BCBA, a board certified behavior analyst, and say, we need an FBA. That does not mean that you have to then transition into a 40-hour-a-week ABA program.
No, not at all.
You can just have an FBA on a single behavior and have them come in and say, here's what we want you to do for this behavior.
Absolutely.
And your life can change.
And one thing I like to say on your show every time we talk about problem behavior is challenging behavior is not part of the autism diagnosis.
And I so appreciate you saying
that. Not part
that.
of autism. It's something that many people with autism learn to do, and it can be unlearned.
Right. And it makes sense a lot of the times why they're doing what they're doing, because they don't have another way of communicating. And of course,
it makes sense every time. They're not stupid. They're not doing it for no reason.
Right.
You know, it gets them something.
But we don't know that. You know that, but we don't always know that. And the other thing that I want to say is that in that behavior intervention plan, a lot of times, you know, what we're going to see is that they're going to build into it functional communication so that the child doesn't have to engage in the behavior, that there's some way that they can communicate the thing that they wanted so that they don't have to do it.
That's exactly right. And so functional communication training is probably considered the gold standard of behavior intervention procedures these days because it decreases the challenging behavior, it replaces it with a more appropriate behavior, communication, it increases the independence of the child because now they can ask for what they want instead of depending on others, and it's the least intrusive treatment possible because you're not, you know, you don't need to use any negative consequences.
Right.
In the vast majority of cases, just teaching a child to ask for what they want and no longer giving them what they want when they misbehave So there's two pieces. Teach the child to ask for what they want, and when they ask, give it to them.
Right.
And then...
Which is hard sometimes, but we can make it happen.
Yeah. And then the other piece is no longer give them what they want when they misbehave.
Right.
That's it. I mean, you know, unfortunately, you really can distill probably 30 years of research into those two statements. It's the most important thing to know. If you want to know one thing about challenging behavior of your child, whether it's at home or in the school, that's it.
Yeah. And I think that's super duper important. We talk all the time, though, about, and you were just saying earlier, that sometimes you don't realize that you're rewarding the negative behavior that happens.
Very rarely realize it. If you realize it, you probably stop.
Yeah, but we don't put it together. It's easy to see in other people, but we don't put it together. I always talk about when my son was engaged in self-injurious behavior and would hit his head against the kitchen floor, I would be the mother who would run screaming across and pick him up off the kitchen floor and rub his head and sing to him and rock him and give him some juice and sit in the chair and have this lovely, fabulous, nurturing moment because he hit his head on the floor. And I honestly could not see that he was hitting his head on the floor so that would happen.
Right.
That I would then give him all of that love and attention. I didn't get it.
Well, and it's not very common. You know, you don't see that a lot, and so how would you get it? You know, that didn't.
Thank you, because I always think, what was wrong with me that I didn't see that? But
why would you get that?
But
it's
when
not like you bought a parenting manual at Barnes and Noble that said, oh, by the way, if your kid hits your head on the floor or hits his head on the floor, it might be because he wants your attention and juice and to snuggle. I mean, right? It's pretty different from what we would expect as parents. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of research to show that very exact same problem behavior happens for that exact reason a lot.
Yeah. And in the moment when I did realize it, it was because Ryan Bergstrom was in my house and said, no, you're not going to do that. He's somebody who works here as well, and this was many years ago, and he said, no, we're going to handle this in a different way. And it was an amazing moment in my life, huge shift in my life, really difficult, good 20 minutes, 30 minutes that he, stayed with me, this therapist, and kept talking in my ear and said, this is what you're going to do, and this is how you're going to do it, and this is why. And
the reason why so much of this is so difficult for us as parents is because it violates narratives that we have, ongoing narratives that we have about what is supposed to be, So of course a good mother would comfort her son when he hit his head.
That was what was going on,
right? Like you'd have to be an awful mother to not care for your son when he hurt himself, right?
Exactly.
And so it turns out that with kids on the spectrum and severe behavior, what makes good or effective or good parenting or whatever is different from what we expected, and different from what comes naturally to us. And so, it turns out maybe all of that care and attention that you wanted to give him, you're still going to give. You're not going to give it, but you're just not going to give it as a consequence for the behavior. You're going to give it before the behavior happens.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to continue to talk here, but I'm going to ask, because we're down to the last 2 minutes here, I'm going to ask Emily to cycle through the ways that you can get a hold of us, because as the show ends, the conversation continues. So take a look at the ways you can get a hold of us. I want to remind you, we're not going to be here on Monday. We'll be here on Tuesday, and on Tuesday, we have people from Paper Clouds Apparel who are going to be here with us. That they have a clothing company that is especially it raises money for autism charities, and it's specially designed to be sensory friendly. So we're going to be joined by them to talk about what they have going on and how they're raising some money. But anything that you want to let people know about Autism Research Group as we wind down to an end?
Please check us out, www.autismresearchgroup.org. It's our nonprofit research institute dedicated to doing research that makes a real life in the difference of families of kids on the spectrum. As well as we have a number of sort of community outreach things we're doing, barbecue in the park, roller skating events, different types of conferences, parent training. We're putting together a sibling sort of like buddy system. So there's all kinds of good stuff. There's lots of good information too for parents on research and things like that.
Are you still doing surveys about what kinds of things people want researched?
Absolutely. We want to hear from parents. We want to hear from you what kind of research you think matters the most in terms of research on autism. And so we have a survey that's on our website, and we highly encourage parents to take it.
And have you been able to take any of their suggestions already and implement? Okay, interesting.
No surprise. There's probably 2 200 different parents have taken the survey so far, and there's been about 200 different responses.
Really?
So
They've all been different?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to narrow it down, but it's given us a lot of good ideas.
Okay, awesome.
But, you know, if there's one common thread, it's, you know, do something that really helps, you know.
Yes,
and so
absolutely.
that, you know, that's kind of what we were expecting going into it, and
you're in the
it makes
business
sense.
of that.
Yeah.
Absolutely wonderful. Well, we appreciate all of your time here and all the things
Thanks a lot.
that
It's
you
always
do.
fun.
And you make it fun. You always make it reinforcing for me when you're here.
Fantastic.
All right, we're out of time, but we'll be back on Tuesday morning at 9 a.m. Until then, please give your kiddos a hug from me. Bye-bye for now.